let me tell you, I was pouring sweat, because I'm not a mainstream
Uh-huh.
actress. It's just, that's when I realized, holy crap, like you do have to, even people who suck, they have to be pretty decent because this is so not easy.
Hello, everybody. You're listening to Chatting with Candice. I'm your host, Candice Horbacz. Before we get started on this week's episode, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to chattingwithcandice.com, and from there you can either sign up for our Patreon account or click that little link that says Buy Me Coffee. Both things help me out a ton because I'm just getting started, and I actually have some plans to do some in-person podcasting in April. So yeah, every dollar matters. Thank you so much. And if you're watching on YouTube, please remember to hit that subscribe button, like, and comment. This week, I'm really excited. I say that every time, but I'm always really excited for a guest. But this guest is very special to me. She's one of my role models and idols, and I can't believe I'm about to have this moment with her. So please help me welcome Tera Patrick. No, I mean, your lighting looks great. I've had a lot of people that are like putting lamps all over the place because they're not used to doing Zooms or anything like that. So no, it looks awesome. You look awesome, by the
That's
way.
something that everyone has had to completely adapt to. It's crazy. Like all this, oh yeah, everything's online now,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to
you
like
know?
start doing some more in-person things. So I'm actually doing like an LA trip coming up soon. I just feel like in person there's like this energetic exchange that you can't really, unless you have like a lot of like practice, like get like through Zoom or like a laptop. I know it sounds kind of like hippie, but I think it's
No,
like
no, no.
it's more personal, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because have we met in person before?
No, you were actually supposed to
Okay.
sign next to me at Exotica, my last Exotica. And I was so excited. I was like, I finally get to meet you. And then something happened. And I either like maybe you weren't able to make it or our times didn't link up. So it was Chicago, I want to say. Um,
Oh, okay, that's the one I missed. Oh, okay.
I know.
Because you don't know that either. Like I know that it's crazy to think, but I stopped 14 years ago.
Holy cow.
So so many people came in and out that I never got to meet. And you know how it is when you meet people at conventions. You're signing and
Yeah.
everyone's always interrupting you. And so,
It's I had such a love-hate relationship with conventions, like especially in my first couple years, I was like, this is amazing. Like you just feel like you're on cloud nine. And then every year it becomes like a little less and a little less. And it's just I
yeah.
feel like the energy there, it's like so much like taking like from other people so that you're not
They're
like
really
replenishing.
draining. Yeah. And it takes so much. People don't get it, but just to sit up straight, to always be smiling, to always be aware of literally every single thing that goes on around you. People think that's easy. And it's like in hindsight, okay, you're not shoveling snow, but it takes so much out of you. You're so exhausted when you're done and you're like, you know,
I would get these headaches that I've never experienced anywhere else in
yeah.
my life from smiling so much. And it's going to sound crazy to
Mhm.
people who haven't experienced it, but it's like right in your occipitals, like in the back. And you're just like, I don't know what this is. And I might have to go to the hospital. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
like
It's
move my
tension
face.
too.
I
Uh,
know. But yeah, I wish I could have met you back when I was still shooting. I don't know like if this is gonna like sound weird or not, but like you were one of like the women I always kind of like idolized. I know like that's like a heavy term, but like
no, thank
yeah, when
you.
I was like younger, I'd see you on the cover of magazines or the cover of like, movies, and I just thought you like that's a woman. Like that's like what I
Oh.
want to be. And like I mean not to over exaggerate, but like one of like the inspirations for me getting into the industry. Um
Oh, thank you.
yeah, so like I'm part Japanese and like
Okay, I was wondering that too. I had like a list of questions for you too.
oh, ask
We
away,
can
yeah,
go.
but like you were like the mixed Asian woman that was like exotic, and it was in a time of like blonde bombshells. So for me, like I think that also was like very powerful, and I was like, I can be pretty too. Like I don't have to be this other thing that's like all Baywatched out. Um, so yeah, you were a huge inspiration for me.
Thank you. No, I'm very humbled by that. And for me especially, That's why I say I didn't get to cross paths with so many women that are in the industry now. And even though, you talk on Twitter or you follow people on Twitter, you still kind of don't. That's why I'm so happy we're chatting today, because you don't have a gauge of someone. So I understand what you're saying, like doing, especially with what you're doing, and it's so in depth, and you want to understand how one dimensional we are as people,
Yeah.
So
That's the thing that always like drove me crazy with all the interviews I used to do back when I was still shooting. It was the same questions over and over and over again, and none of them had depth. Like it was like, we don't want people to think that she thinks or has an opinion because that might turn someone off and ruin the fantasy. And back when I was first starting, I was in that I don't know if you saw like the DP Star contest. It was like for a digital playground contract.
Oh, right.
And one of the panelists, their advice was to not show too much of yourself and never say that you're married, never say that you're in a relationship because it ruins the fantasy. And I was like, that just doesn't sit well with me because you spend so much of your time working, right? It's like, I don't want to completely abandon like who I actually am. Like that's what differentiates you from another girl. Like I don't want to be just like ditzy and available, right? Like there's so much more to me.
Well, it gets old.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, it gets old. I mean, you can peddle that shtick for the first 6 months, but I mean, after a while, guys stay. And this is often the advice that I give girls is when you're building your brand, you should encompass your life, of course, what you're comfortable with, because that's why they're going to stay. After all these years, they're going to keep joining your OnlyFans, or they're going to listen to us talk because they're so curious. They want to know who you are. They're going to follow you if they like you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So do you mentor girls, or do you like try to like dish out advice? Because I feel like when I started to reach that level where I felt like I needed to kind of give back, and maybe like I would see someone about to like jump into a trap and I'm like, oh, don't do that. Like, let me help you. But most of the time I feel like ego gets in the way and competition gets in the way, and like they feel like maybe you're trying to like sabotage them or something, but it never worked out for me. So I kind of just stopped.
I'm the same way. I'll be honest with you. I've always said that my heart is always open. My mind is always open. I'm really terrible at the social media thing. Are we live, by the way?
Yes. No, live?
Okay,
no,
good.
not live. No. That adds like a whole nother level of complexity like I don't want to deal with. So yeah, it's like all recorded.
Sorry, now I'm like, I'm all nervous. No, but something that I'll agree with you on is I found with social media, there's such a barrier there. And I think half of it is jealousy. I think some of it is ego. And I think some of it is almost this desire to kind of watch girls from afar. It's like girls, because of their ego, won't follow other girls, but they're so curious. They want to know what they're doing. They want to know, like, hey, girl, where'd you get that outfit? Ooh, she lost a few pounds. I know she did. What is she drinking? She was with this guy last year and I know him. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Their mind just starts going. And so part of me was, I always made it really clear that I was always available to help girls, as you said, navigate the business, regardless of our personal views, political views, regardless of, things that you choose to do. Because I've always said that there's many facets of the adult industry that I don't necessarily support, meaning some of it to me is very, I would say, aggressive.
Yeah.
I kind of always stayed more on the glamorous side. I loved feature dancing. That was a huge part of the business that I stayed in long after I quit shooting hardcore. But I've always said to girls, I'm more than happy to give you the advice that's worked for me. If you want to try webcamming, if you want to build your own site, anything that I know that's worked for me, I'm more than happy to help you with that. I've kind of, because I would get these DMs like, this guy's taking all my money. And I was like,
oh God.
I don't want to be like the therapist, but you know what I'm saying? That's part of mentoring too. Like you feel like you can't really pick and choose what advice you want to give, but I've tried to just stay more professional than personal as far as mentoring goes. And I find that has helped me. I don't know if that made sense. But.
No, it totally does. Like, at least you're still like available for certain things. Like you haven't completely closed that door. Where for me, like it's pretty closed. I've just been like burnt too many times. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like I started with like such an open place. Like I experienced a lot of shit in my, my time. I've been shooting for like 10 years now. But I haven't
Mhm.
been shooting mainstream now for about 4. And
Oh,
it was like the kind of the same thing. Like we had similar careers in the same sense as like I've always kind of done the more of like the pretty stuff. Like
right,
I performed dirty, don't get me wrong, but I still did it pretty. And I never
right.
was with more than 2 people at one time. Um,
Which puts you in a whole different category too, not to cut you off, but as far as the fans go and as far as your peers go, it kind of in a roundabout way segregates you as well, just for people listening, when that's why I say facets of the industry, because there are like strictly webcam girls,
mhm.
there are strictly, and I find that that's really getting blurred now.
Oh yeah. But I don't know if you experienced it because it was obviously a very different environment like back when you were shooting mainstream, but
Back in the day, no, I'm just kidding.
no. But like because I didn't do more extreme stuff or because like I was very much like a no person. Like I had no problem saying no if someone was like you have to do this position or you have to say this or make this face, whatever it was. If I felt like it didn't represent me properly in like the best light, I would just say no. So I got a reputation
Absolutely.
of being like a diva or like just in it for the money or to business or she doesn't like sex because she's not doing these crazy things. I'm like, I'm just being myself. Like there's no amount of money that's going to make me do something that I regret that's out there forever. And I just felt even more isolated because I wasn't doing extreme stuff. And I've heard you say on other podcasts, it's like, but where's your longevity? If you come out the gate and you're doing these crazy things, like then what? You have to stay there. You can't go
Yes.
back, right? And then
Sam Trip. Oh, sorry, go
no,
ahead.
I was gonna say like where do you go? Like what's next after that, right? Like do you see yourself still shooting for 10, 20 years? Like it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable, and something I think that both of us will agree, mentally, where you are mentally, your personal life tends to dictate your career life
Mm-hmm.
up to a point. So, as you said earlier, if I'm on a set one day and I've agreed to go there and shoot, a scene, and someone on the spot tries to pressure me into doing something more, you've been put in this headspace of stress, and you've been put in this headspace of tension. And one, it's not an ideal working environment, but it's also, I found that when girls tend to make decisions like that, as you said, they end up living with regrets, and then they end up slowly kind of taking their I don't want to say morals, maybe standards a bit down. And I remember speaking to a performer kind of early on, and I remember always telling her, if you can't unring the bell,
Yeah.
and if you look, I told her, the hardest thing to live with, I think, in life is regret. Okay, there are some mistakes and you can grow from them and you can learn from them. But exactly as you said, that money's already spent. It's already gone. It's not going to, unless you invest it, it's not really going to serve you after all these years. So these choices, all these things that you're making today, you have to stick with them. And I told her it's so worth it to walk away with your integrity. It's so worth it to walk away and know that you can be proud of your body of work. You can be proud of what you've done. And mentally, I think that when you transition or when you decide you want to leave the industry, you can completely go with like a clear conscience and just a good feeling. And I think that's the most important thing, is your mental health and your spiritual health.
Mm-hmm. 100%. So you
Especially as you transition, right? Because as we said, you get married, or there's so many things that come up that you don't think are going to happen. You're like, oh, I met someone, or oh, I'm going to be, I'm going to start a family. It's hard to think that way, I think, in your early
oh
20s
for
and when
sure.
you're making tons of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you
But
have like
things
that
have a
narrative
way.
too, where people are like, you're never going to find love. You're never going to have a family. So then I think they like kind of dive in a little bit deeper because of that too, because of that uncertainty. I don't know. I was
Yes.
fortunate. Like when I got in, I was kind of like always dating the same guy, and then we got engaged, and then we got married, and then we had a baby. So like our relationship has gone through like the entire trajectory like since I've been shooting. So I've been really
Oh,
lucky.
wow.
Um,
Okay.
I don't know what it's like dating while you're shooting, especially if you're really famous. Like that has to be really hard. You met like the father of your daughter was in the industry, right?
Well, it's a funny story. So we're both Fleshlight girls,
Mm-hmm.
and he was actually the molder for Fleshlight.
Oh.
So I met him. So he's actually, yeah, he's my daughter's father. His name is Tony. So he works actually in the special effects industry. So he worked on Superman, Batman. He's worked on tons of Marvel movies. He's a costumer. He's a union costumer. And Fleshlight, when they were first starting their company, I was one of the first girls. And so I believe that the owner, Steve, I believe
Mhm.
his son was doing the molds, I think, periodically. And then they were like, okay, we need to step it up and get like a good molder. So they called around, to some special effects houses in LA. And I remember Tony telling me this funny story that one of the prop guys was like, okay, who wants to go mold porn star vaginas this weekend? And they were like, and no one said anything, right?
Uh-huh.
And then Tony was like, does it pay? And he's like, yeah, they pay your flight, they pay your hotel. And Fleshlight, they are amazing. They take such good care of
Yeah, I
us.
love them so much.
They're such a great company, right? So they flew us all out, and we met. He molded so I redid all of my textures. So he molded my mouth, my vagina, and my butt. And we flew home. Actually, the photographer who shot everything was Holly Randall.
Hmm.
So the three of us flew back to Los Angeles, and yeah, we had a baby a year later. So it was kind of a whirlwind romance. We're still really good friends. We were together the first 2 or 3 years, and then I moved to Italy with our daughter, and we're still very close. She's so lucky, my daughter. She gets to grow up in Italy, and she gets to grow up in the U.S.
Oh my gosh.
With both of us.
Yeah, amazing.
So yeah, so like you said, it's my husband now is a defense attorney. He's a criminal defense attorney. So I met my husband here in Italy, but it's very true, that narrative. And I think that it's definitely who you surround yourself with. You have to have a life outside of the business. You
Hmm.
have to. I tell girls when they're stuck and they say, I don't know what to do, I'm not sure what I might transition to. I tell them, what are your hobbies? What do you like? What are you into? You'll meet people there too. I think it's so important to just completely separate yourself once in a while and put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
No, that's amazing advice. I wanted to ask you, like, so I couldn't agree more. It's really important to like make sure you don't spend too much time in your alter ego, right? So like there's Candace, which is like me, and there's Eva, which is, the person that's comfortable getting naked in a room full of people and having sex in front of a bunch of people. Like those are, I have to get into very different headspace to do one or the other, right?
Absolutely.
And when you first start, especially if you're like really popular out of the gate, it's very easy to want to stay in your alter ego because that's where the glamour is and the attention and the love and the money and all of these things that are just telling you like this is where all the fun is at. And it's easy to neglect the real you. How, when you are like obviously one of like the most mainstream porn stars of all time, like how are you so like grounded and like you talk about spirituality, you have a family, like how did you not let your ego kind of like overtake? Because I've seen girls that have shot 10 scenes that are walking around and they're like, I'm the Queen of England, right? And
Right.
then there's you who's actually like this powerhouse, right? And you're just like, you're very humble. So how did you check your ego and have this healthy relationship with it?
One of the first things that happened to me was in 2008 when we had that huge financial crisis.
Hmm.
I lost both my houses that day and a huge chunk of my savings.
Wow.
That was super, super humbling to me. And it was kind of in that moment. And by the way, I had worked since 2000, putting money away, buying real estate. Like I was like, I'm on a roll. As you said, I was doing conventions, cash is flowing in. And to lose a lot of that was really, really humbling for me. It's humbling also because you realize that it's not everything. It kind of forces you to say, well, I have to start over. I'm just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I mean, yeah, it was definitely, I think, losing a lot of what I had worked for
Mm-hmm.
kind of made me realize I need to stop. I need to really I need to have a backup plan. If this happens, I think just it's life. Life
Mm-hmm.
just really hits you. And something that we're going through now with this pandemic, I think kind of also forces us to really reevaluate our priorities,
Mm-hmm.
what's most important for us. When that happened in 2008, I was pretty close to done as far as shooting goes. I think I had probably maybe half a year, one more year that I shot a few more scenes and I stuck them in the can and then I started releasing them. But I really reevaluated where I was going to go from there. So I went back to school, and moving abroad was it was a big relief for me because I found myself also kind of on this treadmill of when I was living in LA,
Mm-hmm.
of really forcing myself to just work harder, work smarter, always hustling. And I really wasn't taking any time for anything else. I thought if I stay here, I'm not going to focus on my goals. As you said, it's so easy to just do one more shoot. It's so easy to just go, oh, okay, I'll take this job. We get this carrot dangled
Yep.
all the time, right? No, just one more shoot. You don't
Mm-hmm.
even have to get naked. You're like, oh, all right, I'll chew up my Saturday doing that. When it's like, no, I was going to go meditate. I was going to hike. I was going to do something for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always that money, money, money
Mm-hmm.
that sucks you back in.
Yeah, and I think so. I've always lived on the East Coast, and I just would travel to LA for like a couple weeks, like at most, like
Oh, you were
maybe a
smart.
month. It helped a ton because, again, going back to what you surround yourself with, I would come back
The
home.
lifestyle.
hmm I'd come back home to North Carolina, and my husband would be like, "Can you tell Eva to like stay in LA? Like, you're back home." Like, and I would be like, at first I'd get really defensive, and then I'm like, "He's right. Like, I'm being like a monster." And part of it was like I was surrounded by like cars and like all of these dinners, and you start to have like a false sense of who you are. And then also, I again just like kind of bad experience after bad experience. I had to like kind of create this like porcupine shell of a
Yeah.
person just to survive in some cases. But yeah, I think
Something you learn. Oh, go
no,
ahead.
you
Sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when you said porcupine shell, I've had similar experiences with other girls in the industry. And here's one of the things that I always tell women right out the gate. You may never know why someone just doesn't like you.
hmm
It could be because their boyfriend wanted to work with you. It could be because their agent said he wanted to sign you. It could be something completely made up.
hmm
It could be a fan who crawls into your DM and said, well, this girl said this. I mean, there's just such a huge matrix out there with all these things that are constantly, you know what I mean? And
hmm
that's the funny thing about entertainment is it's all interconnected in some way or the other. Something that was always funny to me was I would always have fans say, why don't you do mainstream? Why don't you do more mainstream movies? Why don't you do more of this? And I tell them, because the first few years that I was in the industry, I was doing so well for myself. And I was really arrogant. It never computed to me. When a casting agent or someone would say, but she has to audition, I was like, well, I'm terrified. Why do I have to audition? Like, I produce my own movies. Why are you asking me to audition?
hmm
And they were like, because that's what we do in mainstream. Like, you're one of 10 billion in adult. You're the top of the top, so you can do whatever you want. And I was like, huh, okay. So I decided to chance it. And I did this audition for The Sopranos. And I had to read with James Gandolfini. Let me tell you, I was pouring sweat, like pouring sweat, because I'm not a mainstream
Uh-huh.
actress. It's just, that's when I realized, holy crap, like you do have to, even people who suck, they have to be pretty decent because this is so not easy. But, the moral of the story is I remember him saying, it was nice reading with you. And I was just sweating and mortified. And when you have these experiences, all these experiences, they humble you. And so I told myself, okay, I'm just going to be a little bit nicer. I mean, I try not to read too much into what I think girls think or what they tweet or what they say. We do have a lot of experiences, but I try to tell myself, let it make you better.
Mm-hmm.
Some things you really just have to shrug off. I know now, because we do so much with technology, it's so hard to, how many times have we read a text, looked at it, and we answered it in our head, and then we went to make dinner, and then days went by.
Mm-hmm.
So I try not to think, oh, I did something, she hates me, because I know how careless I can be.
Oh, I'm the worst at like responding via text. Like it'll be
But
like,
we mean well.
shit, I thought I responded.
And you mean well, because you answered it in your head, and you're like, you're sending her good vibes. You're like, yeah, girl, I remember that day, but you never replied to her. But in your head, you did, and you were like, aw. So I think that, yeah, we really just have to, I think, take a beat and be nicer to ourselves. And I was so happy when you reached out to me too, because again, I think that when I started in 2000 and then you had come in years later, we really never got to cross paths. And there's so many women that I really did want to, just like we're having, just wanted to have a nice conversation with, because I believe that there's so much more we have in common than we don't have in common.
Oh yeah, across the board.
But we never get to convey that.
No, and I think it goes back to like everyone giving you that really shitty advice of like not getting into anything real or deep, so then you never get to know anybody because like everyone's constantly walking on eggshells and living in this fake character, and that's like I guess maybe one of the reasons why I never got really close with anyone while I was shooting too, like that was in the industry, is I would start forming these relationships like with, girlfriends, guy friends, whatever. And then like they never really let you in. Like it was, I can only know you so much. And then anytime like something real would happen, or I don't know, like you have like those tests of relationships, right? To like see like what's actually has staying power and what doesn't. And it just, they all kind of like just fell through.
Success is a funny thing too. It breeds contempt. And in entertainment, we're naturally, I think, we're pitted against each other in kind of a strange way. It's sometimes not even intentional, but I found that, for example, at conventions, I found that some girls will be like, well, why is her line so long? Why is this? Why is that? Why is this? And I'm like, well, let her have her moment. Yeah. I mean, everybody has I think that it's human nature, maybe, to feel that little bit of, why is it not me? But it's a funny business. Sometimes I ask myself, I'm sure you do too. In fact, I was going to ask you, there is that moment. Everybody has that moment. I don't know if it's when you're on set. I don't know if it's when you see yourself, when you're proud. I don't know. I was very proud when every time I got a magazine cover. That was a huge accomplishment for me. Modeling has always been my first love. And I think that some of I don't want to go as far as to say painful moments that we have in the business, because it's work. It's so much work to be successful. It's so much work to get to where we are. And I think that sometimes we're not even allowed to enjoy these milestones or accomplishments that we have. Like, was there something that you accomplished where you were like, oh my gosh?
I would say when I got Penthouse Pet, that was pretty big for me. It was something, and the timing was perfect, honestly. So I had kind of just made that final decision. I'm like, I did my last scene. Like I thought about it for probably a year, and every time I'd get ready to stop, like that carrot would come down. They're like, just one more scene, just one showcase, just this thing. I'm like, okay. Like, well, I've kind of wanted to do that, or I wanted to work with them. So there'd always be a reason, and be like, sure, I would do it. And I finally made that decision, like, this is my last scene. And I didn't really tell anybody yet. And then I was talking to Mark Spiegler, and he's like, hey, I think I can get you Penthouse Pet. He wasn't even my agent. Like, he just kind of like set this up for just out of the goodness of his heart. So I go in for like the test shoot at the office. And then like a week later, they're like, yeah, we're going to bring you down and we're going to do like the whole spread. We're going to make you pet, blah, blah, blah. I got my key And I was like over the moon because it was something I always wanted. I always wanted to be a pet. I always wanted to like have like that centerfold. And it was like the last thing I did.
Oh,
So it was
wow.
so cool. Yeah, it was like the cherry on top. So I feel like everything happens for a reason and like the timing was perfect. And it was kind of like the universe rewarding me for like going on the right path, right? It was like,
Sticking it out. No.
yeah, they're like, you're making the right choices, so here's this thing. But that was the hardest thing because I mean, there's a lot of fear when you stop shooting
Oh,
mainstream.
yeah.
You're like, I'm gonna be forgotten. I'm gonna lose my fan base. What happens if what I do next doesn't work out and then I have to come back? And like, I feel like that never really looks good because everyone has that assumption like she's coming back because she failed, right? And that might not be the
Right.
case, but that's just what the narrative is. So all of these things are
Always.
spinning and yeah, I don't know. I just had enough signs that like it was my time to like throw in the towel. But I think that's like the beautiful thing about what's happening with the pandemic is a lot of these girls were kind of forced to start self-producing and they're getting a
Mhm.
whole new understanding of their self-worth and like their value and their brand. And I think that's so powerful and I'm really excited to see where that goes.
I am as well. And I think that for what I like seeing too is I love seeing. I did not know anything about. I had done productions, I had done movies where I had my budgets and I had to hire everybody. But self-producing is on a whole nother level, where you do everything,
Hmm.
absolutely everything. And I like seeing how creative everybody's getting. And I've picked up what's really nice lately too is I said earlier, I'm really terrible at social media. There was this gap, I would think, from like, or I would say from 2008 to maybe 2015, where I saw everybody just really getting on Twitter, getting on Instagram, getting verified, going through this whole process. And I was like, well, I'm in school, I'm maintaining my website. I still have my pay site. I've kept it all these years. It still does really well. So I kind of always was of this mentality that social media just wasn't a paywall.
Hmm.
So I never utilized it. And now I'm kind of seeing how many women have and how it's done really well for them.
Hmm.
And so I kind of feel like that's been something too. Everyone's just sort of learning different facets of technology.
Hmm.
Like you starting you doing your podcast.
Oh, this was hard. I'm like the least tech savvy person in the world. So I'm like watching all these YouTube videos of how to like set up all this audio. It was a nightmare. But yeah.
Oh, YouTube is amazing. That's the thing too. You'll fall down this rabbit hole. That's what I was doing with, back to self-producing, lighting. What's the best angle to light your butt? I'm like, I can't believe I don't even know how to light my butt. But I would see these these women taking these incredible
Mhm.
selfies. And I was like, I can't do that. I would do 100. And I'm like, nope, all in the
They're
trash.
probably also doing 100 though too. You just see the
I
end
realized that
result.
later. And then that's when you really realize, okay, we're all in the same boat. Let's not be hard on ourselves. No one's really reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
But now that we're having to be a lot more resourceful,
Hmm.
this changes the game a little bit too. And I'm happy. I'm so happy that there are platforms like OnlyFans and, smaller platforms that exist where we can upload our own
Hmm.
content and we can just absolutely, decide how we take our payments. We're not really under the thumb of a company
Hmm. There's so much more
that
freedom.
dictates how much we shoot,
Hmm.
how much we can make.
That's the most shocking thing to me. I like, do you ever have those moments where you look back at younger you and you just laugh because like you see how worried you were in a moment and how ridiculous that was in hindsight? So it's like
Yeah.
the thought of me thinking 'cause that I wouldn't be able to like support my household right anymore if I stopped shooting. Like that was a huge fear of mine was like, what if all of my income goes to zero? And then I start producing. And this is before OnlyFans even. This is when I just was like really focusing on my website. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden I started seeing what that was. And it was like predictable income, right? It was just like these memberships that are auto renewing. And I was like, oh my gosh, like how silly of me. And then OnlyFans happened, and then that even just amplified everything else. And
Mhm.
like you said, a lot of these girls are getting like really creative. So I'm really curious like what studios are going to do because it's when I was shooting, I know like a lot of girls don't like talking about rates and everything, but before I got contracted, I was at 1,500. And then I got contracted, and then my regular rates were 3. And everyone was like, "Who does she think she is? That is so high. She must have this inflated sense of herself." And like I'm like, "Well, it's my body first of all, so I get to kind of call those shots." And to think that that was high in retrospect for an entire day, like a lot of people don't realize, like my longest days were like 18 hours on set, and they'd give you
And for the rest of your life, by the way, you don't get residuals.
no.
This is the end all be all.
Right. And like they
They
used to
own this.
repurpose that and sell it in other countries. So like that one product that you made, they turned into 100. They turned it into a calendar. They turned it into a HBO series. They did all of these things, and you get this tiny little sliver.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it really shifted my mindset on that. And I don't know, I felt like a lot more, I guess like proud and like in control, and like it validated my decisions back then when like everyone's like, you need to be at $1,000. I'm like, that's crazy. I was waitressing
Yeah,
and bartending and pulling that in a shift when I was in
exactly.
school. That's crazy to me to have like this very personal scene online forever, right? And that closes so many doors too, like moving forward. Like I can never go well, maybe I could be a professor, but it's very unlikely. And I can't go sell insurance, and I can't like there's a lot of things I can't do because of my past, right? So it has to be worth it.
It has to be worth it. And something that, we've said before is that you have so many girls competing or thinking that they're
Mhm.
competing for the exact same spot.
Mhm.
And what I tell them is, these companies shoot, first of all, I think that a lot of them they shoot a particular kind of person anyway. So I always tell girls what happens is a lot of girls will come in and intentionally undercut them just to get a scene, just to get something.
Ooh.
And like you said, I had really high rates too. A few times I even went up to 5,000 because I'm like,
Yeah,
listen,
girl.
I'm going to be there I'm going to be there all day and all night. And by the way, looking back, so many of them were spliced into softcore, other
Mhm.
scenes. I mean, I remember one movie being 3 movies, and I thought, well, I don't remember doing that. And they had chopped it up and again, you never get any residuals. You never get anything
Mhm.
else after that. So, I was going to touch on what you just said. That was another reason why I moved abroad was I never really had any barriers to anything else I wanted to pursue, but I did notice that the culture in America is definitely a lot more starstruck.
Mhm.
I walk my daughter to school every day. I've been able to go to school here, university with no issues. People don't really approach me as much, but when they do, they're very polite. I think that it's just a very different community. It's just a very different culture.
Mhm.
And that kind of was really important to me in raising my daughter. I didn't want her to have to. I remember when my brother was young, this is so funny. We went to the LA Zoo and we were on a golf cart because they were like taking us up a hill. I think we were going to where the reptiles were. And my brother was like, this guy's running after our golf
Oh my
cart.
God.
And he was like, Tara, Tara. And I'm like, just turn around, never mind. And they were like, so I think that's when we had to tell them, okay, this is what as they got older. But I definitely found that I remember even holding my daughter. I remember a valet guy like had a phone and was trying to take a selfie. And
Oh
I'm like,
no.
I'm holding my child. It just became so invasive.
Yeah. Ooh, that's like a hard stop for me is baby
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
um,
But you understand what I'm trying to say. Like we're so entitled to our personal life. Like I've had guys argue with me on Twitter and say, well, it's so rude that you won't give a fan a picture. And I'm like,
why are you
it's so
owed
rude
that?
that you won't let me be with my child.
Hmm. Wow. It's just, yeah, I hope that moment never comes because I don't know how I would react. I'm like so, so, so private with him. Like I haven't shared his name, his photo's not anywhere online. Like I just try to give him that
Mm,
privacy, and then if he decides he doesn't want it later, that's up to him. Um,
right.
yeah, I think you have to have that awareness of when is an appropriate time to approach someone and when's not, because like that child's not asking to be like famous or like You know what I mean? Like you just can't
Of
do
course.
that. That's crazy. Ooh, I would say my craziest fan experience, I was staying at this hotel that was connected to a mall. That sounds really weird. I don't know why I ended up at this hotel. I think I was like feature dancing.
Were you featuring?
Yeah, and they just kind of
Oh,
put me
okay.
there. So I was like, okay,
Their mentality is like, we'll put her next to the mall because she could get, Victoria's Secret or.
yeah, she can spend like her free time there and not get bored or something. So I was walking around and I had this fan and I was on the phone. Like I was on the phone with my husband and he just comes up and he's like, "Oh my gosh, like can I get a picture?" Just starts taking it without waiting for my response. I'm like, "Okay, well I'm on the phone. I have to go." And I was just like getting uncomfortable. So I went and I turned around to go back into the hotel. He starts following me and gets in the elevator with me. And I was like, you got to get out of the elevator. Like, you can't see what room I'm in. Like, this isn't okay. And like, it just didn't compute. And then he was acting like I was being super rude. I was like, don't get off the phone with me yet because there's like this situation happening. And it's, I don't think that that happens to most celebrities, like most regular celebrities. And people don't
Right.
understand, right? Like, it goes back to when you're deciding what your value is. Like, we have to deal with a lot of stuff that people don't consider, right? And then having someone invade like the time with your child, like these are all things that we have
Mhm.
to deal with. um think I remember hearing you say you stopped shooting like after you became a mom. Was there like a reason, like why did you just have like a shift of just like how you saw the industry?
Well, so I stopped shooting in 2008,
Okay.
and my daughter was born in 2012. So it was a
Oh.
full 4 years before. So actually, funny enough, that period from 2008 till 2012, I was pretty out of the industry. I had moved actually to Las Vegas. So I'm very close with my family,
Hmm.
very close to both my parents. I have a younger sister who's 2 years younger with me. She actually went on my book tour with me when I wrote my book, and she did my accounting for a few years. So my family, I mean, listen, we never had Tera Patrick movie night, obviously, but they're super, super like right, like we ever would. But no, but I mean, they're super, super supportive.
Hmm.
I've always had a very they've always been, my mom's always like, look, that's my daughter on a billboard when I was featuring in Vegas. So they've always been good with my choices,
Hmm.
I guess. And actually, my dad's proudest moment, believe it or not, was when I posed for High Times because he's actually a farmer, a grower. And I remember when I did the cover of High Times, he got like 4 copies,
Oh,
and I was like,
cute.
really, High Times? But I stopped from 2008 to 2012 and I really got into real estate. So I started investing.
Mm.
And that was sort of weirdly enough after the crash, but that was sort of my mind kind of going forward. I was really taking that mental break. I was physically done. I think it was more, as like you said earlier, I did everything that I wanted to do.
Hmm.
There wasn't really anything left to accomplish. I've had fans ask me such funny questions like, but didn't you want to do a gangbang? Didn't you want to work with so and so? Didn't you want to work with so and so? I'm like, well, then I'll never retire because it's not like you just get to, I mean, of course, you get to cherry pick who you work
Hmm.
with, but it's not like it happens super fast,
Hmm.
and you just shoot the scene right then and there. But I kind of told myself, this just, I'm going out on a high. I'm proud of the work that I've left behind.
Hmm.
I look my
Hmm.
best. It's really just time to start working smarter.
Hmm.
I have to find some other things to invest in. I would really like to finish school and I'd really just like to secure my future.
Hmm.
I was on my own and that was really, I think it was just a real, I'll be honest with you, it was like a soul epiphany, I
Hmm.
guess I had. There was nothing bad that happened and there was nothing I think to look forward to.
Hmm.
I saw the industry really shifting and changing, especially with, I guess, like production
Yeah.
wise. I saw a lot of companies just kind of changing over. There really just wasn't anything more to do.
Hmm. Yeah, I can relate to that. Do you so like, do you spend a lot of time like with like spiritual practice or anything? Because like I get a vibe that like you're like this like spiritual creature. Am I wrong?
Well, I meditate every
Hmm.
day. That is the first thing I do after I drop my daughter off. So every day, no matter what, I take my daughter to school, which is really, I will say, she changed the entire course of my life. In 2012, when she was born, and I relate to exactly what you said so hard when we first started talking. I remember a company that I was actually under contract to at the time. I was terrified. I was 6 months pregnant. Holly Randall actually secretly shot me for my website so I could stockpile content till I was 8 months. She was like, girl, gotta suck it in. You gotta suck it in. But I mean, it was funny. She was the only person that knew
Mhm.
because I told her, Holly, I'm terrified that people, they're going to cancel my contracts or that I always heard, I don't know, just legally that they couldn't do that. But I was still really scared that it just wouldn't be acceptable.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah, so I announced it at 6 months, and then right when she was born, I think that cemented everything for me even further. I felt happy because I had a lot of content stockpiled, but I knew I was making the right decision,
Mhm.
and I felt happy
Mhm.
that I could just raise her, that I could just focus on being a mom. I
Mhm.
think it's such a magical, wonderful gift, as hokey as that
I
sounds,
say
because
the
it's
exact
stressful
same
at times.
thing.
It's stressful, but it's being pregnant, and I can't describe it. And then having your baby, it's a blissful, magical, it transforms you,
Mhm.
like biologically, mentally, on a cellular level. It just completely changed me. And that's something every day I really, really, especially these past few years that I've been able to live in Italy and that I've been able to just enjoy my life and the pace of my life. My life is at a slower pace now. It's about half of what it was,
Mhm.
but I'm so grateful and I'm so happy. And that is something that I meditate on and think about every day. Something I never did when I was younger
Mhm.
was I never listened to my inner voice.
Mhm.
I never listened to my instincts. I didn't take much time to become aware of my consciousness.
Mhm.
And I think that was not good. I made a
Mhm.
lot of bad decisions.
Same. It's hard though because if you're not like creating like that healthy space for your voice to be clear, it gets like muddled down with all of this like nonsense. If that makes,
Yeah,
if that makes sense, like
absolutely.
material things or ego things or things that maybe even, aren't you, but you're young and dumb, so it seems like a good idea. Um,
We're also being fed too.
mhm.
We're catered to. We work in an industry that caters to us. Someone comes and makes us beautiful. People come and tell us we're beautiful.
Mhm.
And then that's validated even more by our fans. And we're constantly just, we're being petted and we're being stroked. And we're not allowed to, I think, feel a certain way too. It's like we can't feel pain because why not? You're getting paid, you look beautiful, you have all this. How could you feel sad?
Mm.
So, I can remember actually going out onto set, sometimes feeling, I wouldn't say scared, but you have to get into this headspace. You're performing.
Mhm.
And so sometimes there's butterflies, sometimes there's anxiety, but you've got someone ushering you and pushing you. No, 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 you can't feel that way. You can't feel that way. So you're like, okay, I've got to just find a way to cope. It's a very isolating feeling as well.
Mhm.
And I mentioned this on Twitter before. That's often why, sometimes people will really think that you're hard or, like you said earlier, that you're arrogant when all you're really doing is you're protecting yourself. You're just trying to guard your heart. You're just trying to guard your consciousness.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
it's a lot of energy that you're putting out
it's
there.
a ton of energy and it's so I didn't have like an agent most of the time. I was mostly kind of by myself and like there was definitely advantages to that, but there were and probably an equal amount of disadvantages. Like I didn't have anyone like in my corner if I needed anyone. I didn't have anyone as that buffer. So like normally
Right,
your agent can be the bad guy, right? If something happens.
right.
I didn't have that, so I had to be that. So then my reputation kept growing and growing and growing, but it can be a lot. Like, I mean, I don't want to like say like that I never say I regret my time in the industry. Like, I would say overall it was more good than bad, but towards the
Yes,
end it
absolutely.
was just like overwhelming. Like I started getting anxiety. I was never really like an anxious person. And then like I would have it and not be able to shake it. And then I think meditation's
Mhm.
great, working out is great, like grounding yourself in other activities that take you away from that space and remind you like who you are is very important. But when you're out there and you're shooting like 5 days a week, it's very hard to not get like wrapped up in it.
And it's impossible. It's impossible at times, even times like now, to sometimes just shake a feeling off. Sometimes we just wake up and we just don't feel good. That was actually me. There was a day last week where I was sitting there and it took me like 10 minutes to realize that I'm half meditating because I'm like this. Like I'm so clenched
Uh-huh.
and I've got some weird song in my head and I'm like, this just isn't working, you know? And I remember having this weird, funny thought, like, does the Dalai Lama get mad? Like, does da 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 get mad? You really this whole feeling of we're all in this together. No, we're not. We're all completely dealing with things the best way that we can. Some people are oblivious to what's going on. Some people have a lot of sensitivity. Other people are very hardened. And I think that we're realizing now how affected we can be by our environment. And I think for me, what was hard was Italy was one of the first countries that went into a super hard lockdown
Hmm.
because we had so many deaths early on. So for me, walking around, I would just go out just to get fresh air because I thought I need to keep my immune system up. I just need to keep going. But to see businesses closed, to see people not outside, it really just, it was giving me this feeling of, it was like an ominous feeling.
Mm.
But I think these are the times that, as you said earlier, we need to find faith in something. We need to find our center. We're going to have good days. We're going to have bad days. There are days where it's not easy I've wanted to create, I've had these great ideas to create content because I'm like, no, my OnlyFans is suffering. Or, we put so much pressure on ourselves,
Hmm.
but we have to really focus on taking care of ourselves too. And this is something that I tell girls that are active, especially now, I think in an industry that you and I know all too well is can just really chew you up
Hmm. There's always a
and
younger
spit you
girl,
out.
right? There's always someone younger and hungrier. So I think for me, like I learned that really early on when I started shooting. Like I'm
Mm.
very introverted. So when I didn't know anyone when I was brand new, I would often like be like the weirdo on the side, just like watching everyone else interact. And I was always like paying attention and taking mental notes of like just all of the relationships and how easy it is for girls, like even at the very top, like if they do anything wrong and they're not prepared, like it can just all kind of go away. So that's why from like a very early point, like I started my website and all of these other things. And I've tried to like, I guess like focus on things that were like more, I don't want to say important, but like more real, I guess, than shooting. And I think I got into like meditating and spirituality probably towards the end. Like I started to kind of create like this callus of a person and I didn't like that and I wasn't like serving
Mm.
me like my relationship with my husband wasn't at its best. My relationship with my mom
Mm.
wasn't at its best. Like all of these things, I just started to become very like angry and resentful and just like hard. So
Mm.
we went to Arizona. We did like this retreat for like a week. It's like
Oh.
basically like alpha brainwave training. I talk about it all the time, so people are probably sick of it, but it like really changed my life. Like the guy that founded it is this like PhD doctor, neuroscientist guy, but he's also like very spiritual. And I'd always been like really curious about spirituality. Like my grandma, like she, she has like her whole shrine. She does it twice a day. And it's like very much part of her life. And she's always talked about like spirits and energies and all of these things. But I never like implemented it into my daily practice. And then
Mm.
I do this week long retreat and I leave it like a completely different person, like lighter, happier, like less judgmental, less like easily offended.
Mm.
And like it's gonna sound crazy, but I honestly think it's like what led me to even getting pregnant because I wasn't supposed to be able to have kids. And then I did all of this work and all of a sudden like my doctor's like, I don't know how you're pregnant. Like, congratulations. It's wonderful, but I don't know how it happened for you. And honestly, I think my life just completely did a 180 when I started focusing on like meditating and spirituality and a sense of something bigger and more meaningful.
Mhm.
It's the reason I am where I am today, I think.
Well, while that is the one thing we have to be is open.
Hmm.
We have to be ready and we have to be open to accepting, how we want. Because I've always believed this, that this is just our vessel while we're here.
Hmm.
And I know that, my mother's Buddhist. She's Thai. I remember you're half Japanese.
30%.
So
I say half because it sounds sexier.
Happies. Um, I've been to Japan like 23
Wow.
times. Well, many, many times. Japan is my most favorite place in the whole world. My soul is deeply happy there.
Mm.
And something that I found when I first went to Japan was how they appreciate everything. Everything has a purpose. They give thanks for everything and to everything.
Mhm.
One of the most beautiful things I saw, I remember going to an onsen, and this was before I was tattooed because I cannot go now. But I remember them asking me, okay, we have to pray and we have to give thanks for the water and we have to give thanks, for all the flowing water and the trees. And I was like, okay, and yeah, it was like, wow, these people are so grateful. And so, it's true. It's so true when you open yourself to gratitude, and that's when you really start to feel the transformation. And for me, it was really my daughter. I remember before, I mean, I don't want to go as far as to say I was a selfish person, but when your life is your own,
Mhm.
there's just so many things that don't come into play.
Right.
And so, as you've said, every single day, even if I just take 10 minutes, I always say 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night. And I tell my husband, and my husband actually shocked me because he's a defense attorney,
Mhm.
a criminal defense attorney. It's very hard work. He deals with a lot of, I mean, he takes on so many cases, and some of the things he's told me really make me, I am disappointed in humanity, but
Yeah.
no, he has some hard stuff that he has to deal with. And I remember one night as we were falling asleep, he told me, thank you for making me a little more grateful.
Oh.
And I was like, wow, you're welcome. Because, for me, I told him, you have to let these things go. We can only take on so much. I found myself just like you in the end sort of period of the industry. I found myself just really low on energy, uh, not finding joy
Mhm.
in so many things. I'm like, I live in LA. I can afford a $20 juice. Mind boggling,
Uh-huh.
because you leave the house and you've already spent what, $100 on a 40. Everything is,
Yeah.
you're like, I need to take a moment and appreciate this.
Mhm.
And you don't. We just stuff ourselves and we take so many things for granted. So like you said, when we decide to be open and accept,
Yeah,
accept
I
that
think
there's
that's when
more.
everything starts happening. It's like I feel like there's always like clues as to like what you're supposed like the path you're supposed to be on. Like you're like if you were to look at it as like hitting a strike, right? Like the most like beautiful, easiest, like fullest expression of your experience here on earth. I feel like the closer you get to that, the more rewards you start getting. And I think like the further
Yeah.
away from that, the more struggle you start to get. And I don't know that I feel like that's kind of just been like if I look back, I'm like, oh boy, like that was I could have made that easier on myself. Um, yeah, I think
But
becoming
you
a
took
mom.
something away from it, which
Mhm.
is
Oh
important.
yeah. Yeah, I think there's a huge importance to any kind of struggle. I think if we could just like reframe that and look at again like look at it with gratitude and see like how is this serving me? Like there's a reason why this is happening. Like there's there's no pain without purpose, I don't think.
Yeah,
So, what can I learn from this and how can I make better decisions? Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
absolutely.
instead of becoming like a victim of your circumstance, be like, no, this is actually an empowering moment. Like I can become like the hero of this circumstance. So like what do I need to shift? And for
Right.
me, like becoming a mom was or I should say the whole thing of me getting pregnant was like very it's been a ride. So I shared I shared me being pregnant with my fan base, which a lot of people hide, like they don't say when they become a mom. And then I went back and forth if I was going to still shoot while I was showing, like not hardcore, because for me, like
Right.
that wasn't safe to me. So like that was off the table. But like solos or even photos, whatever. I'm like, I wasn't sure yet. So I was stockpiling content, just in case. And then for me, it just seemed like I feel why not almost like I didn't like overthink it. And I was like probably a little bit angry in my decision making. Like I was almost like I'm not going to let anyone tell me what I can and can't do or how I can shoot or not shoot. And people, it's like still my body, and just because I'm pregnant doesn't mean I can't be sexual, right? Like this was my
Absolutely.
my mindset. I still believe that, but so I started shooting, and I obviously got like a lot of different feedback. Like some people were very into it. Some people were like, "You're a horrible person." So that it was both spectrums existed, and it was really hard. Like I got comments that were like, "Your child's," well, this had nothing to do with shooting pregnant. This is just because of who I was. But they're like, "Your child's gonna kill
Right.
themselves." Like how can you say that to someone? Like that's very dark. That's very heavy. Like to just throw that at someone, I it blows my mind. But um, we had a really, really difficult delivery. Like
Oh,
he was born with like an APGAR of 0, and he had to spend a week in the NICU, and he was put into medically induced hypothermia to protect his brain from swelling. Like it was the most traumatic experience of my entire life. And I remember in that moment when like they were rushing him out on the crash cart, I was like what was my participation in this, I guess, like energetically speaking or spiritually speaking. And then my mind spun to shooting, and I was like, is this because of this? And I had to like walk myself back out of that, because I truly believe like you're not ever being punished, right? Like I don't think that that's how the
I was
universe
just going to use
works.
that word too.
Yeah, but when you're in those moments, it's very easy. But it made me like think back at certain decisions, and I don't know that I would do it again. And I think part of it was because like I made those decisions like out of anger rather than like empowerment. When like for me specifically, it obviously doesn't pertain to anyone else that shoots while they're showing, but for me that was like such an epiphany. And a lot of it was like, if he doesn't make this, like nothing else matters. Like my money doesn't matter, my relationships don't matter. Like I'm just gonna like disappear off of the planet, because like I don't see myself like surviving this situation. And it put so much into perspective for me, because it's so easy to get caught up in like identifying yourself by these things, right? Like I'm the
Hmm.
person that has millions of followers and this blue check mark and this nice car and whatever all these stupid things are. And in that moment, like when you're about to lose like the most valuable thing in the world to you, you're like, hold on. And then it makes you realize like where you were falling short, if that makes sense.
Well, that's your epiphany.
Hmm.
And the thing is, we can never compare because, of course, like I had mentioned earlier, I mean, and this is in no way in comparison, but when I lost everything in that crash, I remember saying to myself, this is what I worked for.
Hmm.
Like, I took all my money from all these years of working and I stuck it in a bank and in two houses.
Hmm.
Like, and it's gone. It was just literally gone like that. And that's when I had, like you said, I had this thought of going, this is stupid. Like there's so much more to life than just working and putting it away. And that's the mentality and the mindset that's drilled into us too. I think even still now,
Hmm.
because we're told we need to have security. We need to have, okay, yes, of course, to function, we need to have money in the
Hmm.
bank and we need to have savings. But when it just evaporates or when it's gone, that's when we realize that, to have our health, something that I think about every day, like you just said, the thoughts in your head, these become your actions. This becomes your environment. This becomes what you
Oh
project.
yeah.
This becomes, I think, your reality.
Hmm.
We have a way, our mind really has a way. It's always funny to me when I see people, not funny like haha funny, but late at night when I see, oh, I'm having insomnia. I'm like, well, get off your phone. I always power mine off at night
Hmm.
and I put it away and I put it in another room and I force myself to sleep or if I can't sleep, then I read or I go stretch because having yourself attached to something. We have to really learn to also be without things.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be okay with just being okay. We have to be able to sit quietly, to think, to think about what's most important to us,
Mm-hmm.
to not be so connected to things that aren't inside of us. Also, I do believe that we can heal ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We really can.
Mm-hmm.
Our thoughts are such a big a big part of that process. So many things that happen to us, traumas, a lot of things. I remember having to, like I said, that transition period when I was first moving here, I had to take accountability for a lot of things. And that's really hard too.
Oh, yeah.
It's really hard to sit down and have a conversation with yourself and say, why are we here? Oh, we're here because of this. I mean, we sometimes just want to turn it off and say, no, 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 no,
Mm-hmm.
that was not my fault. But then I think that that's when you really start to heal too.
And grow, for sure.
And grow. That's the other thing. One of the biggest pushes for me to come here was growth.
Mm-hmm. So
I really wanted
have you had like health issues? Because like the way that you're speaking about like healing and self-healing and that like makes me think maybe like you had something that you worked on, or I'm like, I might be reaching.
Well, no. It's so funny. When I first started in the industry, I had a contract with a company. And back then also, I didn't have an agent. I didn't have a lawyer look over it. And when I wanted to get out of my contract, they ended up taking me to litigation.
Ooh.
And it was devastating for me because I had been in the industry for 2 years, and they were like, well, if you're not going to continue to stay with us, we're going to blacklist you. And they worked really hard on doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to get out of it, but it left me with this feeling of kind of like you said, okay, it's me against the industry. Everything that I do, everything, it has to be for me. I can't rely on anyone. I can't trust anyone. And it's a very isolating and lonely place to be because I had fun during my years in the industry, but there were some times where I just felt really lonely. I kind of wished I had someone that I could just ask for advice or am I doing this right? Or am I doing, you're just kind of navigating everything on your own. And there's not always someone, especially in our line of work. I mean, I always say, I call them civilians. I mean, normal people don't always understand what we do.
No.
We can't really just have this conversation like.
No clue. Even like some of my closest girlfriends, like back when I was shooting, I would try to talk to, and they're like, I don't know what you want me to say here.
I don't know.
Like, I don't know. I guess I just want you to listen. You know what I mean? Because, yeah, you can't get advice from someone who hasn't experienced it because it's so off the wall.
Right. Or they don't believe you. They're just like, right. Like I started to feel like conspiracy theories before conspiracy theories. Like they're like, no, that doesn't happen. I'm like, listen, they tried to force me to sign this contract. And they're like, why would they do that? So I'm like, you don't get it. It's
one of my contracts. I was like, okay, well, I'll get back to you in like a week. I have to give it to my attorney to look over. And they're like, why? I'm like, what do you mean why? They're like, oh, everyone just signs it. And I was like, well, if she wants to just sign it, that's fine. But I'm going to have someone review it. And there was a ton of changes. And they're like, of course, Eve is changing all of the stuff. I was like, because it's nonsense. There's a lot of words in there I don't like. And I actually got
difficult.
Oh, yeah, it makes you difficult.
Makes you difficult.
But again, like you don't want to be legally obligated to do something with your body that you're going to regret later. And then I ended up actually getting canned early without cause, but who's going to go up against a giant company, right? But there was still a lot of stuff. Like I would show up to set and like I don't know how your contracts were, but we would like list out everything I was like willing to do and then the price. And then if it wasn't there and they wanted me to do something, then we could maybe like table it and like discuss what would work for parties involved. But if it wasn't in there, it was expected that it wasn't going to happen in that contracted year. So I would show up to sets and like very extreme things like, like a massive orgy would be there. And That's
Mhm.
not priced out. I never said I would do that. And I would be in the UK. So they flew me across the friggin' world to shoot with no one that I knew. I didn't have any
Right.
friends, an agent, nothing. I show up to set with all these people and they're like, oh, this is what we're doing. And I was like, well, it's not because I never agreed to, I didn't consent to this. So that just kept happening over and over and over again. So finally, I like went to social media, which I think is one of the biggest blessings of having such a platform is that you can like expose certain things. And I was like, well, this just
Yes.
happened. And then soon as I like lifted the lid on that, they're like, okay, well, you no longer have a job. And then I got blacklisted and I had to find like these smaller companies and then work on my site. And it was hard. It was definitely hard. I understand why girls don't speak up. Because
Hmm.
if you're not like if you don't have like that inner strength, like you just you just did all of this for nothing, and now you have to start
Well,
over.
that's what I had gone through as well. And it's like I said, it was extremely isolating
Mhm.
because not only had I been blacklisted, but there's not one person, there isn't one girl, there's no one that will come to you. And I actually remember, I don't, gosh, for the life of me, I don't remember her name, but she was a performer, and I'll never forget. It was at AVN. I think I was in the gift shop, like getting headache medicine because I was just so over all the nonsense. And really quietly, I remember she was like, "Hey, Tara, I just want to send you, I just want to say hey, and I just want to send you, some good vibes. I really feel for what you're going through. You look great. You look great." And then she skittled off, and I remember feeling like, okay, wow, maybe some people are watching, and even if they can't even if they can't help me, maybe they're just trying to at least send me some good juju.
Mhm.
Because as you said, it's such a horrible place to be. And I remember I always get asked when we first were talking about mentoring, I always get asked by girls like, what advice would you give? Or when we talk about the random interview questions and podcasts that we do, the number one thing that I always tell new girls or just anyone entering any facet of entertainment is, to just have a lawyer look at your contract. Don't
Mhm.
sign anything without an attorney. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. They could be your friends, they could take you out for drinks, you could have the greatest relationship, but at the end of the day, business is business.
Mhm.
And it's not something that I feel comfortable saying, and I know that it's an ugly truth of any business, but it's always business before people. People are expendable. Entertainers are expendable. We,
Mhm.
you are expendable. It's just how it is. As you said before, it's not even always that there's someone younger and prettier. There's someone more talented. There's someone less talented. And that's another facet of the business that's hard to swallow too is, but I'm more talented, but I'm prettier. The universe has this magical way of giving us gifts or making us wait for them, making us wait our turn. Sometimes we dodge a bullet and we
Mhm.
don't realize that that just wasn't meant for us. And
Mhm.
sometimes they're really funny out there and they're like, no, I'm going to put you through a little bit of this headache because I feel like you need to learn a lesson here.
Mhm.
So,
It's hard to remind yourself in the moments when you're not getting something that it could be a blessing in disguise. Like by you not getting that thing, it's actually going to serve you better in the long term. But
right.
you're so stuck in like what you think you want, especially like right now.
Or what
And
you think you
again,
deserve.
right, or and that's the problem too, right? Is like the entitlement. Like I've had awful moments with that. Like I've had to really work on my ego because there were moments where I was very entitled. Especially when I was getting all these contracts. I was like, I'm better than blah blah blah. And it's like, you're not. Why do you
Yeah.
think that? And you have to like really just check yourself. But um like me losing my contract in the moment, I was in tears. I was calling my attorney. I was seeing if there was anything I could do, and there was nothing I could do. They're like, yes, like you have the right to sue because you were wrongfully terminated. However, do you want to spend a high six figures to get this. And of course not, right? It's not worth it. So
And it's
I was
so
like,
damaging to your psyche.
oh yeah.
Litigation is the worst thing. I did not mean to interrupt you, but I don't know how my husband does this for a living, because it was seriously this, it was mind-bending and terrible for my conscience. I remember for a solid year seeing those dates on the calendar of having to go to court. I mean, it is so, it's so hard on you.
What's crazy too is that they actually took you through the litigation process because
Yeah.
like you're just one performer. Like that's not affecting them. Like that's strictly out of vengeance. Like that.
It was. Well,
Yeah.
that's what was interesting. And a lot of years have passed, but there is still a non-disclosure, although you could probably find it on
Mhm.
the internet, but I'm not allowed to name the company. But
Right.
they signed another girl during this time who ended up also 10 years later having this exact same issue.
Oof.
And so the funny thing about this is they had no upside to suing me, and they had no reason to sue me. It was specifically to send a message. It was to tell all the other companies and all the other girls, this is what we're going to do if you think you can leave. And the craziest thing to me during that time was, it was two things. First, that you have to wrap your head around, this is like how you've made your living for the last 2 years. You've come to kind of trust everybody. There's such a deep sense of vulnerability there
Mhm.
because you've trusted these people. And now that you know they're acting out of complete vengeance, what else are they going to do? How else are they going to slander me? I mean, it became personal. And
Mhm.
then I had to go through the legal system for a year and a half with a case that mainstream courts didn't even know how to handle. Like, I remember one judge he was like, why would you force her to do these movies? Like, he couldn't wrap his head around it.
Also, that becomes like forcing like sex at some point, right? So how does that play into it legally?
Right. And so interestingly, I remember when I was looking for a litigator, because also no litigator wanted my case. They were like, oh, yeah, I don't want to deal with this kind of garbage, or I must be a garbage person. Or, I mean, it just kind of went like all over the place because they
Mhm.
had their in-house attorney. And I ended up getting Anna Nicole Smith's attorney because I was like, okay, these people at least have some sympathy for my situation. And they looked at it completely logical. They're like, these people are forcing you to perform one that they can't legally do that. And it was just hard. It's hard when you're fighting people who are kind of actually fighting you with your own money,
Mhm.
because I was pretty much their first contract girl. So that was the other thing. I had to wrap my head around, why are they fighting me so hard? Oh, because I've made them so much money. So they don't want to let me go. But they also
Mhm.
didn't want to give me what's fair.
Mhm.
So it was hard. It's hard mentally to tell yourself, you've built your name, you've built your brand, and it's all about to go away because you're kind of stopping. Like, I just wanted what was fair. I wasn't
Mhm.
even I wasn't even being, how do you say, a diva about it. I wasn't like, well, give me $10 million dollars and a new car and this contract. I just wanted to be adequately compensated because, like you said, they were paying me, I think it was 3,000 a movie,
Yeah.
4
Wow.
scenes. So
Oh
it
my
was like
God.
nothing. Yeah. So that's why I was like, what? Um, yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy, crazy times. So that left me with a bit of, I went back and forth for a few years, like, why was I so stupid? And I made such a bad decision. But like you said, you pick yourself up, and that was at the end of the day when I was able to walk out of the court. I was pretty low on funds, but I told myself I have my name, the ability to work,
Mhm.
and here I am.
No, I think that's why it's also so important not to, I guess, neglect like the real you, because when you have these situations where you could, essentially lose everything, like no one's exempt from that possibility. That if
Mhm.
you acquired like enough skills throughout like your experience, then you can have someone take away everything and start from scratch and still build it back, right? Like
Right.
I'm pretty confident now with myself, like if everything were to go down to zero, it would suck. I'm sure I would like have my moment. But once I collected myself, it's like, okay, well, what are the skills that I've learned, right? Like I've learned like social media marketing, right? I've learned how to do a podcast. I've learned how
Yeah.
to create a brand, like all of these things. So because I've spent more time on Candace than Eva, I feel like I'm protecting myself if anything like happens again. But I don't see that happening again because I have a very bad taste when it comes to contracts. So I don't ever see myself being beholden to somebody else again because it's just not where I want to be.
Exactly. No, and I think that, like you said, we should never stop learning. We should
Hmm.
always teach ourselves to be resourceful. Now we have a lot more tools to not be as dependent like before. That's how the industry changed too. We were
Hmm.
completely dependent on the studios before.
Yeah.
That's how we made our money. We signed, even if we didn't sign contracts, the studios were cranking out, 8, 10 features a month. So there was kind of always a piece of the pie to go around. And I think now, because novelties, I mean, there's just so many tangible things that are disappearing. Everything's really going online now with even streaming. That's why I've told girls too, a lot of your fans, you can never ever, that's such a big concern that our fans are going to go away. I think they grow with you,
Hmm.
especially the more you make yourself accessible, but accessible with your boundaries. You
Right.
have to keep some boundaries. Like I remember doing a podcast a few weeks ago, and one of the guys was like, well, you love yoga, and you meditate. You should do some naked yoga meditation for your OnlyFans. I'm like, no, 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 that's for me. Like
Hmm.
I come with boundaries. There are some things that are absolutely for me. I know that I remembered, like we said earlier, there were some shoots that I have nothing against super hardcore, but
Hmm.
I physically could not bring myself to do it and look
Hmm.
good, have a full face of makeup on. If I don't feel comfortable doing it, you're going to see that. The fans are going to see that. I never wanted to give or project who I wasn't,
Hmm.
not even just for the sake of a paycheck, but I think, as we said, you have to look back on your body of work and be proud of that or comfortable with it or happy with it.
Right. Because it doesn't go away. And
Doesn't go away.
I think that I hope that the future of the industry with stuff like OnlyFans is you're gonna get more like authenticity when it comes to the women. Like they're not gonna
Mm,
be pressured to do these extreme things because again, like I don't want to call anybody out because I don't know anyone's story or, like the reasons behind their decision making. But from like just a statistical standpoint and just comparing performers to like civilian women, there's
mhm.
not that many women that are genuinely into those kinds of acts.
Oh,
There just can't
absolutely.
be, right? Like it's almost expected that you have to do like anal and like hardcore, right? Like not just like
Mhm.
regular like in your real life. When you shoot something like that, it's intense.
Oh,
So that's
absolutely.
expected. DPs are expected. Shoving random things inside you is expected, and there's no way everyone is into that. It can't be the case, right?
No.
So I think that that can be very damaging, and I've seen like some pretty horrible effects of it on some of the women in the industry. And what's unfortunate is like they get a bad rep. Like people judge them, and they're like, "Oh, she's always drunk on set," or "Oh, she's always taking pills on set," or like whatever it is, like that judgment. It's like, well, that's the symptom. What's the cause, right? Like
Exactly.
where's the disease in that? And it's because of this pressure, and it's because like you're you're at the whims of these big companies and they're saying that this is what sells. So now you have girls that are making buckets of money shooting what they actually want to shoot. So I really hope that like what we're going to see is kind of like the crumbling of these big companies and it's just going to be everyone has like independent studios essentially and is like collabing in the way that they want to collab.
It's you as you were saying that, something actually came into my mind that was, you and I talked about how when we were on set, we had a list of things that we would do, not do. You usually talk to the person you're performing with, and you have an agreement about what
Hmm.
you're going to do, how the scene's going to go. And I can remember a very well known, I've never met her actually, but I think she's pretty well known now, performer was saying that she was posing for the pretty girl stills before they were about to do the scene.
Hmm.
And the photographer said to the guy that she was, stick your finger in her butt. And she went, no. Now, this is a photographer, the guy lighting. There's 5 other people on set, and you're saying this without asking her. You're telling the other guy or the guy to do this to her. And she's like, no, no. And she stood her ground. But what a horrible, uncomfortable position for her to be in. And how about everybody else standing there, like having to, hear this director or photographer speak to her like that. And I remember like just getting this horrible rage inside me. Like, how dare you? Because I just, it is, no one should ever be put in that position. And I never want to put a bad taste in the public's mouth or anybody's mouth, because I know that these instances, like I said, it didn't happen to me, but I remember when I first read this and I heard this, I remember just thinking, yeah, there's a part of me that says, I'm happy that in a way I was remembered as a bitch or arrogant. It's so much better than living with that or having
100%.
this. And I wish that we could kind of inspire each other to be stronger and to say no. So I took anger away from that post, but I hope some other girls were like, oh no, they took some.
It's weird how difficult it is to say no, though. Like, and it's like a muscle. Once I started
what
saying
a terrible
it,
position to be in.
It really is, because you have all these people that you don't want to like disappoint or be the reason that they don't get paid that day, and all like have people think poorly of you, whatever the case is. But
and then you're embarrassed, you're vulnerable, you're naked,
It's a weird position. Like you're never in this situation anywhere else in the world.
Exactly. I think that's what I meant to say. Sorry. It's such a unique experience. And you don't, like I said, you never want to put it back. I didn't want to, reading that, I know how I felt, but to the rest of the world, I think that's what reiterates to a lot of people that what we do is bad, or our industry is all like that, or we're all bad. There's no good experiences.
Right. And I think it's super important to know that like everyone has a different experience, right? And I definitely had my fair share of great times and great scenes, and there were a lot of moments that I loved. But if we can't talk about what's wrong, then we're never going to get rid of the taboo, because those things are going to keep happening, right? Like, why are there no like why aren't there female chaperones on set, right? Like I've been on scenes where there was like maybe 15 men, right? Between sound and lighting and assistants and talent, like I would be the only woman. So what if, right? Like if we create a space where this is like a healthy, safe environment, and there is very few opportunities for something to go sideways, then I think that's when we open the door to be respected as an industry. But everyone's like, ooh, we can't talk about what happened that's bad because the public's gonna hate us more. Well, they know what's happening, right? Like they know when these bad things happen. So we have to like be honest about it, say these things do happen. How can we prevent them, right? And where does the accountability fall? Because yes, obviously it's the production companies, because they're at the top and they are a lot of the times like they demand certain scenes. But it does come down to like, if you see something wrong and maybe that person's not strong enough to stand up for themselves, that you also get involved. You're there, you're in the room. Like if you watch someone get assaulted on the street, like you do have an obligation to report it. So why is it different when you're on set? Absolutely. So it's shocking at how hard it is for anyone to say stuff. I've been on massive sets because like with my company, we did like the features, right? So the biggest productions in the game at the time. And I would see stuff that was really concerning, and I would be the only one to say something. They're like, oh, there she goes again. And I'm like, why? Like, why aren't we saying like this isn't okay?
Yeah. No, I had that happen too. On my productions, I was always there, or I would at least be there for the first 2 scenes. And I remember my production manager, which was hilarious to me because I'm like, I'm paying you to production manage. And he got irritated with me because I asked him to get a hotel room for one of the girls. He goes, but she lives in LA and we're only in Orange County. And I'm like, she needs a place to shower and get ready. And he's like, no, she doesn't. And I'm like, she's a woman. Of course she does. And she's performing. I want her to be comfortable. I don't care if she sits in there and stares at the walls all day. I just want her to have a safe place away from you guys and all of this, to just sit on her phone until her scene's ready, or to get dressed, or to take a bath or whatever. And he was like, huh. It's crazy to me. It didn't even compute. But I thought, this is a basic necessity. I want people to be happy. I want this to be a good experience, because with that, she's going to give us a great movie. And it's going to be great for her too.
Yeah, your scene's only as good as how comfortable you are. Like, there have been times where, like, the director had been yelling at me all day and I didn't really know the talent, and it just, like, put me in a bad mood. Like, they didn't have food on set, which, like, you're on set for 12 hours and you can't get anything delivered. You're, like, starving. You do 3 hours of photos and you're bending backwards and doing these things. It just puts
All
you in,
the
like,
pretzel
bad
poses.
Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, well, I'm here and we're just going to go until the director says cut. And I don't know what I'm doing. I'll see you guys on the other side. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And then there's scenes where everyone's very kind and it's warm and there's food, and like, there's like, well, what would you like to do today? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're talked to as a person. Those scenes have been some of my best scenes. But it's like,
you're
weird.
just in a great space, and then you want to promote it. It just keeps going. The good karma just keeps going, or the good vibrations just keep going, I always feel like it's I always feel like it's like the guys with customs. It's like the ones that give you $10 and go, can you do a triple anal backflip? And then the one that gives you 500 is like, yeah, get to it next
Whatever
year
you
if you
want.
want.
That's the same with me. So, like, I do a ridiculous amount of customs. Like, I, like, think about lowering or, like, increasing the price because it's, like, getting unmanageable. But it's the guys that do, like, the entry-level custom that send me, like, a book.
But yeah, scripts.
And they're like, this is what I want you to wear, and this is exactly when I want you to turn to the camera, and then I want you to do... And I'm like, we got 2 minutes. What are you doing? And then the guys that are, like, the big spenders are like, I just want you to say my name, and whatever you feel like doing is fine. I was like, oh, bless you. You're so wonderful. Thank you.
We're going to do, yeah, exactly.
So what's your OnlyFans like? How has that transition been from, like, going to, like, these mega shoots, right, that were, like, the glamour days of porn to, like, self-producing for, like, a new platform?
So I've pretty much stuck to the same formula of, transitioning into OnlyFans. I still have terapatrick.com. I've had since 2000, since I've started in the industry. And terapatrick.com is essentially, I call it an archive. It has all of my full-length movies, feature movies, gonzos, a lot of my early stuff, Playboy, Penthouse, full pictorials. And my OnlyFans, it's funny, it's complete. It's lots of interaction. I actually do a lot of my customs on there. I leave a lot of audio messages on there. I was just going to actually ask you what some of the strangest requests that you get. I get a lot of requests for just voice stuff, voice notes, voiceovers, voice messages. I've had my OnlyFans for 3 years, about 3 years now. And I'd say more than half of the subscribers have been from this complete 3-year period. And once a week I do an update. So once a week I do an update. Every Thursday I do like a bit of a throwback set or a clip of maybe an old scene. And then I always post, some new pictures. I don't shoot any hardcore, but just a lot of glam. And it's cool. I mean, I've gotten to know so many of my fans on a personal level. There's one that I talk to every week, and he leaves me now little video clips, like 10 seconds. And he's so sweet, and he's in Houston. And so he left me a message, and he's like, I'm freezing, Tera, and I don't know if I'll have power, but this is my message for the week. And I was just like, aw. So it's definitely been a lot of fun for me. And I'm grateful. I'm so grateful to have my fans just follow me. They always ask what I'm doing. I feel fortunate, and I feel grateful, and I really try to let them know that too. I know that there's so many options out there. I've even told guys, listen, there's girls that shoot hardcore with vibrators, with with all kinds of stuff, and they're like, no, we love you, we love talking to you. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
I haven't had, I would say like all my weird requests were back when I was like a webcam girl. Like I got some weird
oh,
stuff.
webcamming, that's a
Yeah.
whole other animal.
Yeah. I had people that wanted to like watch me eat shrimp and stuff like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable doing this. I don't know why, but I'm just not comfortable with it. But yeah, with OnlyFans, it's like pretty tame, like very like almost all my stuff is solos. Like once in a while, like there'll be something a little spicier on there. But
Right.
um I'm fortunate because I really like kind of created the career I wanted. Like I started off implied, and I did insanely well. Like,
I was
and
just
then
going to
it's
say,
like,
I've been webcamming for 7 years. I don't do any nudity.
oh, really?
I've
Yeah.
never.
So it kind of it makes you a better performer though too, right? Because you have to really w be able to turn someone on like with their mind, right?
Absolutely.
So you learn so much about like psychology
Yeah.
and human interaction. It makes you like the top of the top. So then I went into solo, then I did girl girl and everything was milking it, milking it, milking it. And
Yeah.
all my solos did so well and these girls would be like, "Oh, those are so hard. How do you do solos?" I was like, I mean, I started there. I started without showing
Yeah.
anything. So when I, retired from mainstream and went back to solos, I think like that audience was already there and they were like kind
Yes.
of excited to see that because it forces you to perform in a different way.
Well, and you're consistent.
Mhm.
So the trick that I've told so many girls too, because here's the thing, at the end of the day, we talk again about mentoring. Everyone wants this magic formula. You can tell them, no, you have to work hard and you have to be consistent. They're like, no, isn't
I
there
don't
like
do that.
some bunch of numbers I can punch in and then I'm just going to rake in all this money? And it's like, no, I mean, you kind of just you have to figure out what kind of image you want to have, how you want to go about it, and then you have to consistently execute it. And so it's been 7 years. So funny enough, that's how I supported myself. I had never webcammed before. And similar to you, when I started in the industry, the first thing I did was Playboy. And then I
Mm.
did Penthouse. So I had done modeling for a good year and a half. I had done a lot of foot fetish stuff, which was funny to me because I didn't even realize there was a whole market for that. And then I started to do, bondage, but with no nudity. So by the time I got to wanting to shoot hardcore, I remember my agent, Jim South, bless his heart at the time, he just recently passed. He was like, well, how would you like to start? I mean, I can introduce you to some women if you'd like to do girl, girl. Well, I'd never been with a woman in my
Mhm.
entire life before. So I said, well, I think if you give me a guy, it's more natural. So boom, like in 2001, he was like, are you kidding me? If I pick up the phone and say that this penthouse pet, this Playboy model wants to do boy girl, you're going to work. And he said it in his accent like this. His name was Jim South. He said, Tara, my phone is going to be ringing from here till Sunday. So he did. My first movie was with Andrew Blake, really beautiful, really artistic. And exactly like you said, I took a lot of baby steps.
Mhm.
So in 2008, when I wanted to I definitely was going to stop shooting hardcore, but because I had moved abroad and I was going to school, I needed to do something to start building up my portfolio again, supplementing my income. Webcamming. Tons of guys up at night
Mhm.
wanted tees, 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 hand
Mhm.
bras, lingerie. I did everything but nudity. I mean, like you
Mhm.
said, eating a salad. I had a weekly Caesar salad guy. I had a priest weekly. I mean, a lot of religious fetish. There was
Mhm.
so many things out there that just didn't even involve being really past lingerie. But
Mhm.
I was like, this is amazing. Like,
Mhm. Yeah,
it was fun. It was fun
it's a
for
lot
me, and
of
it kept me
fun.
company.
Mhm. Yeah, the camming is fun. I do it like I try to do it every week on my OnlyFans, but you get to like know everybody and like build like these like friendships, like relationships and they give me like inspiration too, right? Like I might be running out of creative juices and then be like, I'd really like love to see this situation. I'm like, oh, that's great. I'll do that. That's like super fun. I have a blast. I mean, Since I've kind of been like doing all my own stuff, it's created this life for me where I can like focus on other passions, right? Like I can focus on my podcasting. I can be like,
Yes.
I'm home with my child every day, which is such a blessing. Like I feel like a lot of
Invaluable.
parents don't get to spend enough time with their kids. So for a lot of people that like are very judgmental about like certain like career choices I've made, I'm like, it's provided me my like ideal life.
Yeah,
Um,
and stability too, because like you said, you can be, you're doing something that you enjoy consistently.
mhm.
There's not these long lulls of insecurity or not having to work, because I think that that's part of the rat race too, is that I'm finding a lot of my, I always say civilian friends, they're out of work. And
Mm.
it's really hard. It's mentally a hard place to be when you're not going somewhere every day, when you're not doing something every day. Something that I enjoyed a lot with the webcamming too. Exactly. It's like, they're like, I remember this outfit, or can you put on this outfit? The other day I was like, wait, I get to wear heels. I haven't worn heels in months.
Mhm. It forces you to like also do your makeup and like put yourself together and it
Yeah.
sounds superficial but it does have an effect. Like
Oh,
I feel
absolutely.
better. Like I
Yes.
feel more myself when I like put in a little bit of effort and I don't just like I don't know, roll out of bed and say this is it for the day. You know what I mean? Like forces
Yeah.
me to demand more of myself.
I was starting to feel a little bit like when we first had the first lockdown, like Groundhog Day.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Because you're
Yep.
just like,
Oh.
oh, okay, here we go again. Everything was starting to feel a little bit mundane.
Mhm.
And exactly when you have that, you're like, ooh, I get to shoot glam today. I get to shoot looking good. And that's actually part of that. That's, I think, a part of what's the word I'm looking for? The hesitation in transitioning out of the industry. That's part
Mm.
of the reason why it's hard for some of us to leave too. We've kind of, when you spend time building up this image, building up this brand, you get used to having this type of day-to-day routine. It's
Mhm.
kind of hard to force yourself to go into a job or to go into something that requires a little bit more brain activity. Or like, I
Mhm.
remember with me going to school, I was like, I have not been in an academic environment for what, 20 years. It was intimidating, and I've had to do it in Italian.
Oh.
So I remember thinking, I wanted a challenge, and I moved to another country, having to learn a whole new language, having to completely navigate a totally different, bureaucracy. I was like, I could have totally made my life easier by just staying in LA, which funny enough was another reason why webcamming, I stuck with webcamming too, was I needed to hear English speaking people.
Okay.
It just kind of kept me connected with, I guess, I guess part of me was still in America as I was kind of transitioning over here. So it was just nice. It was just something that, I could be sexy and glamorous, but I was also speaking with people who understood me. And that
Mhm.
kind of it's very isolating moving to a whole new continent and having to relearn a language and everything was like, whoa.
Yeah, that's so scary to me. Like, I don't know if I would be that brave. I don't know. I feel like I would love to learn another language. I get so mad, and my grandma does too, that my dad never taught me to speak Japanese. Like, he was
Oh,
like born out there, like went to school out there, like he was fluent in speaking and writing, and he just like never gave us the effort to teach us.
right.
Um, And then when my parents split, my mom's like Spanish and white, so she has no idea. And
She's like, I
right,
don't know one word.
yeah, she's got nothing. So it was like very like you had this great opportunity to give me this like amazing gift, and then I've always wanted to try to learn as an adult, but it's very difficult for me. Like I've done all the apps and like different programs, and it's just not my forte.
Yeah, language learning, it's definitely, I will say, Sophia was 3 when we
Hmm.
moved here, when I brought her here. And talk about being brave. I put her in an Italian school and she
Hmm.
became fluent within 3 months. And
Wow.
that was hugely inspiring and helpful for me because I would go through her grammar books. I would go through her books. This is such a good way to learn another language because you're learning. you're learning the most basic structures that you need to learn. And it was funny to me because she had no fear. She would speak, she would talk. I mean, I know she was scared because the first few months at school, she didn't understand anything, but she did it. And I remember thinking, you know, okay, I have to get it together and do it too. We can learn so much from our kids,
Mm-hmm. So are you fluent now?
I would say I'm 70% there. I'm at
So
like
cool.
I'm like at a B1 level. I really have to work on my grammar. The hardest part for me right now is learning things in the past.
Okay.
Learning like the past tense of things. But I don't think in Italian, I think in English. So this is something else with people who are truly bilingual. It's like their response time. Because the other day, a doctor was talking to me and I was like, I was digesting what he said, translating it in my head, and then trying to talk back. And this is another sign that you really still need work because you're just not thinking and conjugating in that language.
Oh, you're inspiring me. Maybe I'll like download those apps again and start again. My husband is like, he he learns everything so quickly. Like whether it's a language or a sport, like he's just blessed in that way. We were doing a trip to the south of France and he spent like a week, just like on an app, reading some books. And we were out there
Wow.
and he was like, he had enough for conversation.
French is hard too, especially the pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
Very hard.
Yeah, I was like, of course you're good at this too. I'm
You're
just
like,
gonna
you
sit here.
order everything, you book
Yeah, I'll just sit
everything.
here. What does this mean?
My husband, it's funny, he has a very thick Italian accent, but to me, he sounds normal. Of course, when you spend enough time around someone. So we were at Saks Fifth Avenue, and he wanted to buy this perfume from a company called Byredo, Byredo. And he's trying to tell the lady behind the counter, but he's saying it, Byredo, Byredo. And she's like, and he's like, Burrito, with his thick, and she's like, can you help me? I'm like, oh, Byredo. And he's like, didn't I say that? And I'm like, no, you said Burrito, and so her and I crack up and he's like, well, I was speaking English. I said it correct. And I said, welcome to my world.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I speak Italian, I have this really heavy American accent. And sometimes they're like,
What is she trying to
what is
say?
she trying to say? So that's why kudos to your husband, because the French accent, I know even sometimes when they're speaking English, when I've been in the airport or somewhere, I'm racking my brain like, what?
Mm-hmm. He's actually really bad at accents though. Like
Oh.
I've never seen someone could have like a British accent and he's like, what are they saying? I'm like, it's English.
Yeah, it's your language.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I wanted to ask, so with like all the stuff that you're doing, like with like your webcam and your OnlyFans and your website, why is your Twitter private?
So I took it on private because I had, and this is bizarre, and I really don't wish this out in the universe. I would hear stories of girls having stalkers or having, incidents with fans. Knock on wood. I mean, for all these years, 20 years, I never had any issue. And this past year, I started having an issue with a stalker who was also kind of coming back to what you had said earlier, had taken some photos of my daughter.
Oof.
And was, just alleging like some crazy things online. And so for the time being, I remember, just when I was having the police investigate things early on, they were just like, just keep your socials on private. They said you could probably take them on and off, but they said until we trace the IP and figure out what's going on. And that's kind of when I learned about having to use a VPN. And I was surprised, but he went really, really hard. And then I found out he's actually a public person as well. He's a footballer.
Wow.
Yeah. So it made me, I think, just feel another level of nothing is out of bounds for me anymore. Like when people tell me crazy stuff, I'm like, I believe it. There's just online makes you so vulnerable in a very different way People have a lot of access to you that you don't even realize. Maybe some things you say. That's why earlier I was saying I power my phone off every night and I go to sleep. I'll see girls tweeting and saying all of this stuff. And I'm like, please, you can't use Twitter for therapy. You never know who's watching. You never know who's screen grabbing what you're saying, what could be used against you later. Even with webcamming, you can have a vulnerable moment and you're talking with someone and maybe they're just taking inventory of what you're saying. I think that sometimes we overshare. We're just maybe trying to share an experience online and we overshare something. I had put pictures, family pictures of my daughter and I online before, not really realizing, oh, someone's going to screen grab them and later say they're their father or something crazy.
Oh yeah. So I was going to ask, do you have like a lot of like catfish situations where people are like using those pictures to like scam other people, or do you not really have to deal with that?
I haven't had that, no. This one though kind of threw me for a loop when they told, I was kind of like, and then I realized I think he was a member of my website. So I think he had spent some time kind of online stalking me, I guess. Yeah. And there was a lot of things that I removed just because I didn't realize, oh, that could have made me vulnerable or this could have made me vulnerable, when I just thought, oh, I was living my life.
Yeah.
I make sure all the geotagging is off. I'm hyper vigilant about that because I didn't realize that people can find your location. I mean, just all these things that you have to tell yourself, you know.
So are the laws like stricter out there when it comes to people like taking photos of like celebrities or like their kids? Because I know in LA it's illegal for anyone to take a picture of a minor. Like
yes,
like paparazzi and stuff like that.
It's the same way here. And I remember so vividly when I was telling you that experience I had, he literally, he had his phone out and I was just holding my daughter. So like you said, I was unprepared for him to even take a photo. He didn't even ask first. And that fan entitlement, I really feel it's more out of control now. I mean, at conventions they line up, they're used to paying for pictures, Comic-Cons or wherever you go. I personally would never go up to anyone, especially with a child.
Oh, no.
And try to invade their space. And that's something that I've found definitely different about being here in Europe, just in Europe in general as well, because I've been to so many different countries with my daughter. And you can kind of tell when someone recognizes you or when someone might be suspicious of you, but they've never approached me. They've never come over. I remember in LA, people would just walk on over to you, even if you were eating. In the airport, in some of the most vulnerable.
The airport's always the worst. I hated that because, again, like I was always East Coast, so I would take a red eye often to get back home.
Oh,
so like no makeup, like exhausted, got 2 hours of sleep, like I look homeless. And they like make a scene at the terminal and everyone's like, who is this homeless girl and why is everyone talking to her?
And have you ever had them stand there waiting for you with photos?
No.
Oh yeah, they love to. So this happened a lot on my feature dance gigs because they know where you're going to land, especially when you're featuring in Flint, Michigan or Lexington, Kentucky. It's not like there's 2 or 3 airports. So they would wait with these stack of 8x10s. And I'm just like, really? One, you're not going to do an autograph session at baggage claim. And then, of course, you have your dance stuff. So you never have like an easy bag, you know, it's always, you know, you've got luggage checked and you have to wait there. And sometimes you'll find that the club will pick you up and they'll send a guy who's kind of like not as protective. So you're really on your own. Or sometimes they'll send one of the big manager guys who knows what to do. And he's like, no, come to the club later. But that was always... Yeah, because you're just like, no, I can't do an autograph session here and baggage claim.
Now, are you still dancing, like pandemic aside? Were you still featuring?
I was. The last gig that I had was in, I believe it was Kalamazoo. Okay. And those were the funnest gigs for me. That was a Deja Vu in Kalamazoo. And I loved going to the small cities because I feel like LA and London are probably the two cities where everyone's super jaded and they're like, oh, give us a show. You know, they have so many other options and they're
Mhm.
always doing something while you're there on stage. But in Fargo and Kalamazoo and Lexington, all these fun cities, everybody's like, they're so happy you're there.
Yep. There's a lot more appreciation for
And the
sure.
energy is so good in the club.
Hmm. Yeah, I
And
miss like I that was something I did for a little bit and I enjoyed it more than shooting like during its peak because you got to
yeah,
travel and meet all these people and it was like I love dancing. Like even
yeah.
now, like if I go to like a club, I'm like, oh, like I wish I could hop on that stage right now. You know, like there's like moments where I do miss that. I just wish that there was a way to like do it without making it like a business because that side of it, like didn't really enjoy like dealing with like
Mhm.
club managers and agents and all of that. Like I just want to like wear something sexy and hop up on stage. Like that's where I felt like the most like confident in my like entire career was when I was dancing.
It's so fun. And having done shows, it's funny because when I came here to Italy, there was an agency as well, and they were like, you know, would you do shows here? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I think that when I came here and when I first started dancing, it was funny to me because culturally, you know, they don't make it rain, they don't throw money.
Oh, they don't?
No, but they pay you really well. So it definitely made it worthwhile. But I remember doing my show and it was just very quiet and all the guys are dressed, you know, Italian men, they're all dressed really well and everybody's like, you know, just very like it's, you know, going out to a strip club is a nice event. I mean, it was just something really nice to do. And I remember it kind of gave me an opportunity here as well to really do shows. Like I got to use my boa, I got to wear really nice gowns, I got to just do like really like more of like a classic burlesque show.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really fun. I've danced in Paris, I've danced in Spain, I've danced, God, Chile, Argentina. I've danced in a lot of different countries. And so the American culture of dancing is fun because, yes, you get this totally different energetic atmosphere. But
Hmm.
I found that, yeah, dancing for different fans and crowds is being live on stage is something that's something too. I guess that's why I understand why rock stars never want to leave the stage either. They're like, no, my time's not up.
Yeah, it's like unless you've done it, you can't really explain it. We my husband and I just watched Hustlers the other day because he like wanted to see it, probably just because like J-Lo's in it, right? Of course. But there's that scene where she comes out and they're introducing her character and she's just like got this
She's got the
energy.
fur.
Yeah, and she just owns it and you're like, "Ah, like I miss that feeling." Like
Mhm.
I don't see myself like going back to it. Like I think, you know, that time's played out, but I do miss that feeling. That's you don't get it any I haven't gotten that anywhere else yet.
That's actually what I was going to ask too is how is the situation there in North Carolina? Like, are you guys open? Do you think clubs will ever open again? That's actually something I gave some thought to the other day was I was trying to like understand, you know, where is the business going to go from here? Just business in general. Like here, so many small shops have closed.
Ugh. Yeah, so North Carolina, we're kind of like in the middle as far as like regulations go. So,
Okay.
our strip clubs have been open. I don't know that they really closed.
Oh, okay.
So, the girls like have to wear masks and whatever, but like yeah, the strip club's open. The bars and restaurants have a 9 o'clock last call, 10 o'clock curfew. Like so, there's
Oh,
curfew
okay.
statewide. But everything else is open. The gyms were closed for a while, but then a bunch of the gyms did a class action lawsuit against the governor, and then they reopened.
Right. Which
Uh,
makes sense to me in the sense of if you're sick, you're not really going to go
you're not
work
working
out.
out.
But
Yeah,
also, hello, this is something healthy
it boosts your
that
immune
we're,
system.
I mean,
Hmm.
this is something, yeah, exactly, that
It
we're
made
doing.
no sense.
So,
I feel like everyone. I don't know. I feel like the we're getting a lot of hints, especially in the States, that this is very politicized, right? And
yeah.
we have like, you know, New York that was closed and having people dine out in like 3 feet of snow. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, actually, we probably should open up because businesses are hurting. Meanwhile, like all these like, like staple restaurants and hotels are like closed for good. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't know. I'm lucky in the sense that like I'm not in New York or LA. I can't imagine, but I do
Uh,
like look down at Florida and I'm like, oh, but they're really living it up. Like maybe we should go to Florida. And my husband's like, we're not going to Florida. Um, but yeah, I had friends that actually left New York. They left the city to go to Florida because it was just so crazy. And they're like, we're not going back.
That's actually, I told myself, it's been 6 years that I've been here. I don't miss America in the whole sense, but
Mm-hmm.
I miss things that are familiar to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of my day-to-day life here and everything that I do, of course, I found a hairdresser, all the necessary things that you need as a woman. I've adapted. I've found all the things that I need, but I love CVS. I love things that are open for 24 hours. There's just certain American things or certain things that, maybe it's more of a convenience.
Mm-hmm.
I live in a smaller city. I don't live in Milan. I don't live in Rome. So I don't have any different types of food here. Like I would love to have some Thai food, just anything different.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to have some shops open. We don't even do delivery or takeout here.
Oh, really?
It's so small. Yeah. So it's kind of like, when moving here was a bit of culture shock in the beginning because I was like, I don't think I've gotten my nails done in 5 or 6 years. There's just no nail shops. And so I really had to also, just readapt and figure out, other things. But I told myself that maybe Florida, I've been looking at Florida. And I think that if I get a place there and my mom lives there, I can visit her easier. And I do miss my family. I'm very close to my sister. I would love to just have a cup of coffee and see her. And that's the thing is like, I'm 8,000 miles away, so I can't just pop back and forth.
So are you allowed to like travel right now, or are you allowed to come to the States?
We are, but the EU is closed to US travelers. So it's a possibility that even though I have residency here, it's a possibility that they can deny us coming back.
Yeah, so that's risky.
So that's risky. And I just, it's been hard in that sense. I think when we're told we can't do something,
That's my personality too. I'm like, wait, okay, well now I want to do it even more.
Right. But that's a pretty heavy, the last thing I want to do is be stuck in transition in an airport. Who knows? I think that so many things are just unclear right now. And this is really a time where, we just have to have faith. We just have to keep going and, we have to find our purpose.
And I think that's hard too, right? Like if you're in a stricter country or a stricter state, like how do you find purpose right now? Like that's so crucial to like your ability to thrive and like your mental well-being, your physical well-being. I think people without that, like you're more likely to get sick, you're more likely to have severe reactions, depression, all of the things. So yeah, I don't know. I think that I think the real pandemic is like a lack of purpose. I think that's really what we're seeing, especially in the States, because like there's just chaos happening all of the time. So I'm hoping, I truly believe everything gets better as like, as the trajectory goes on. So just remaining like faithful that everything's going to work out as it should. And hopefully we start to see the light sooner than later.
I said something on Twitter the other day, and you realize that when you tweet, because Twitter's going to twatter, that it can be misconstrued a million ways.
Right.
And I was saying, we need to stop complaining and we need to start adapting. And that's just across the board. Again, we've become this way. Me too. We've become this way because we've allowed ourselves to be so attached to things that we need to detach ourselves from. Again, just sitting quietly. Okay, you're not working right now. This is a great time to read some books, to go online, to find just knowledge, to just absorb something new. You might just fall down a rabbit hole of something that you're interested in that could become a new career for you or could become a new hobby. Don't let this time be idle. If anything, I think before we used to tell ourselves, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. Well, now you do. Reorganize your sock drawer. I don't know. We have to stay we have to stay moving too. If we just allow ourselves to not see things with fresh eyes, if we just allow ourselves to, again, sit in our apartment and not, like a rat in a cage, right? Not see outside of
Mm-hmm.
what we do every day. I think that this is really a crucial time to maybe just learn, I don't know, plant some little herbs or
Yeah,
teach
like
yourself, teach
yeah,
yourself something new.
exactly. Yeah, I think so too. It's like you almost like the world like needed a reset, right? Like
Right.
we've become so detached and we've like started to lose these connections with each other, with ourselves. So now it's like you are forced to kind of like look at that, see where you've maybe like fallen short or what you've been neglecting, and like realign because I know a lot of people, it's like there's no way that you feel fulfilled working 70 hours a week for somebody else, not seeing your family, not seeing your kids,
Mm.
not spending time with yourself. Um, we we're seeing a lot of people figure out how to work out for themselves, right? Like they're turning like their career into a gig job, and I think that's awesome because now
Yeah.
they can control their hours and they can control what they're getting paid. And even if it's a little bit less, they're genuinely happier. And I think what a lot of
Right.
people are going to realize is like money is not connected to happiness past a certain point, right? So a lot of like hard truths I think we're learning this year, and I hope that like people just like take that opportunity to again like see how is this painful moment actually serving me because I definitely think it is.
Absolutely. And I think that if we learn to, we find joy, like you said, in our purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I know that we had a solid month and a half of lockdown. And it was funny because I was used to school. We're used to children being in school. That gave me so much gratitude for teachers because I remember looking at some of this homework like, oh, wow. Like the process of having to homeschool and do all of these things,
Mm-hmm.
I remember just thinking, wow, they do so much. They influence, the influence that they have is so much. So it was kind of nice because it forced me to take a step back too. And I started studying again, started reading again. I had really fallen off of that.
Mm-hmm.
Reading was something that I've always loved to read, and I just didn't make time for it. So it was just really nice. I got to do some of that. And I think we need to just keep, is it adapting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that if we didn't go through like this lockdown, I wouldn't have started the podcast, that's for sure. Like I would have been focused on other things.
Did you
Like
want to, like, did the podcast come to you or
so it's something I like always toyed around with like for like the last couple years and I couldn't find the confidence to just make my first
push the start
episode.
button?
I'm like, no one wants to listen to me and people are going to judge me. And it's a very vulnerable spot because instead of like someone judging like your body or your looks, it's like your mind, right? And if
Yes,
you start sharing personal things and it's like your soul to a certain level. And
absolutely.
I wasn't ready. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I can't keep ignoring like something like is poking me there and I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And so far it's been awesome. Like I've had people on that I never thought would have agreed to come on and it's kind of like growing into this thing that I'm still trying to figure out how to like articulate, but yeah, I don't know. It's like my passion project right now. Like I'm very glad I started it.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you asked me.
Yeah, of course. I think like what's cool about you is like so I try to research everyone before I have them come on, like just like see like recent interviews and things like that. It's like because again, it's like not in person, so I want to try to feel like I know that person, connect with them without being able to. And I've like seen your interviews go from like the very like standard stupid porn interviews, right? To like more recent ones where like I see you, right? Like you're
Mhm.
letting me see you. And I just, one of my purposes with this podcast is to like show that humanity and like show that we're like these very like diverse and intricate beings and that so much of the time people judge us for this one decision we've made and they
Yeah.
don't know anything else about us. So it's really given me the opportunity to like just unveil that with people. And I think that's so beautiful.
It's it's something that we have so much power in our words, and having to learn another language and communicate in a language that's not mine was also, it was like wow, because I felt like the good thing is when I'm in America, it's like you said, people know who we are, or they think they know who we are, or they think they know something about us. So they already have this preconceived kind of opinion about
Mhm.
us. And one of the scary things, when I say scary, is like when we transition, like you said, in when you're asking guests to come on your show, you often wonder, okay, do they already have these things in the back of their mind about me when I'm trying to get to know them?
Mhm.
And I remember when some people had asked me to do interviews and I really liked them and I admired them, I remember hoping just a little bit inside, okay, this is not going to turn sexual. They're actually going to want to get to know me.
Mhm.
And so being here in Italy has been nice also because I feel like so many of the relationships and friendships and people and things or things that I do here are organic because a lot of people they don't know that side of me or they're not exposed as much to that side of me, if that makes sense. Like I don't walk around here like Tera Patrick. I think over there I'm a lot more recognizable,
Yeah.
whereas over here people don't automatically
Mhm.
click with that. So I feel like when they're getting to know me, it's a lot more, I'm just someone, they're like, oh, you're American. Tell me about America. Oh, Trump is a weirdo. Isn't like, I don't know, the conversations steer more about art or music or things
Mhm.
that I'd like to talk about. Whereas back there, it's always, what do you do? Oh, you're in entertainment. And it's like you already know they know.
Yeah.
And you're waiting for that inevitable moment of like, what are they going to ask me for?
And then you just kind of go on like autopilot with like, because you know what they're going to ask before they ask. I'm like, there's so much more to me, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
so much more to me. Like, there's obviously, like, you have a hell of a story to like just kind of like pick up with a 3-year-old and move to a country where you don't know the language, right? Like, that's a fierce woman, right? Like,
And
I,
that's what I've been able to talk about was and connect with so many other women here. And it's
Mhm.
funny because I met a really lovely woman who I haven't met many Americans here, but funny enough, I met a girl from New Jersey a few weeks ago, and she's here alone with her 8-year-old son, and she's
Mm,
Muslim. And we were
okay.
talking about how we're both dealing with racism being here. And so it
Because
was
you're
just,
American?
what's that?
Is it because you're American or because like you're Asian and she's Muslim?
Asian and Muslim.
Wow.
Which is so funny, right? Because at
Yeah.
first we were like, huh. So it was just so nice to have this discussion, one with another woman, something
Mhm.
that we could really relate to that's deeply personal without really being personal. It was like, I think, a sigh of relief for both of us to
Mhm.
find it's like two strangers finding comfort in this one issue in this one place. And that's why traveling I love traveling so much. And like you said, with feature dancing, I loved getting paid to travel to different places. And I've had some incredible conversations with waitresses, bartenders, doormen, just regular working people about
Mhm.
life and about great things that are so relatable, understanding the psychology behind what makes people tick or what makes them do what they do. And there's really so much more to us. And I think that, yeah, like we said earlier, I do believe that people traveling to so many places and countries over the years has taught me that I do believe people are good. I do believe people are mostly, their souls are good. Our souls are good. And I think that I'm just grateful to have had a job that allowed me to travel and experience that because
Mhm.
I think it's a gift.
Oh, 100%. I think if anyone is in like a place where they're maybe lost or pessimistic or they're seeing the world with like a very like cynical eye, like travel's the easiest way to change that very quickly.
Mhm.
Um,
To refresh your perspective a little
yeah.
bit.
And again, to go back to gratitude, right? It's like you this is mostly like a thing happening in the States though right now where it's people really hating the country. Um,
Hmm.
and by no means is it perfect, right? Like no country is, but if you travel enough, like you'll see like how unique this place is and how
Oh
beautiful this
yes.
place is.
The
And they're
privileges that we have just from being there or being born there.
100%, right? And every country is going to have that, but I think there is something like very special about the states, and I think traveling will make you fall in love with it again, right? Like it's not like as gorgeous as like the Colosseum and all of these like really beautiful pieces of architecture around the world. Like we don't have like a lot of that history, but there's a lot something else here. So I
Yes.
think it's very easy to get wrapped up in all of the heavy stuff when you're too close to it. Like you have to like
Mhm.
remove yourself. It goes back to like the importance of like who you surround yourself with and what you surround yourself with, and that's going to kind of shift and create your reality. So if you can remove yourself from that, especially if you're not content with where you are, you'll start to see the reality that you want manifesting.
Yes,
Mhm.
your mind, the power of really your mind, just making things happen, or even just putting you in a not, or taking us to a not so good place. It's
Mhm.
so powerful, and we don't even realize too. I've like I said the other last week when I was just scrunching up my face and I was holding on to all this tension, I was like, we can make ourselves sick, but we can heal
Mhm.
ourselves
Mhm.
as well.
100%. Yeah, like there's a lot of times, especially if I'm trying to meditate, I don't realize but like my fists are tight. I'm like, what are you doing? And you have to like shake that off. And I recently got a horse, so like there's a lot of
Oh,
ways you can kind of get into a flow state when you're riding or doing like your lessons, and then you'll notice like you're holding your breath in a way, and like that's affecting like your positioning, so you have to be like very present. And I don't know like if you're like super into like energetic fields or anything like that, but in like the quantum space, like everything is a vibration, right? And you're like
yeah.
connected through like this spider web of like energy essentially. So with a horse, their energetic field is like 10 times that of a human. So and it's like 10 times more powerful, so you can kind of like actually link up, and there's like science that says that you can actually get into a flow state with your horse. So like
Oh,
this
wow.
this state of like manifestation and like losing a sense of time and meditation and calm, and it's really really fascinating. um but I think like doing things like that like challenge you and that make you work with like energy in any specific way just like really
Mhm.
help like clear you, make you healthier, happier. And then I guess like, when you have like those aha moments, like information just starts coming to you.
Mhm,
I feel like
mhm.
that happens when you start doing these practices. Like the more you clear out that space, the more room there is for you to like get that information from like God or the universe or whatever title anyone wants to give it.
Right. It's funny. I feel that way when I go to Japan. And
Mhm.
that's what pulled me. I would go 3, 4 times a year when I was shooting, when I was really active in the industry, when I had breaks from travel. I always got pulled back to Japan. I've
Mhm.
seen so much of that country from top to bottom. I even was actually telling my husband the other day, because I took him, we went for Christmas 2 years ago, and I told him there's something in my that makes my soul so happy when I'm there. I couldn't imagine living there,
Mhm.
but there's always something there that's magnetic, or it's a deep feeling of peace
Mhm.
and happiness.
Mhm.
Like I'm literally this like village idiot that's wandering around Japan with this huge smile on my face all the time. Everything in Japan fascinates me. Everything. I'm like smiling and I'm like, oh.
Oh, yeah, we were supposed to go 2 Aprils ago, but then I ended up like being pregnant and then having the baby, so it wasn't the right timing and now the world is shut down, but I've always like felt this need to explore it as a country, like partially just because like, that's where my dad and my grandma come from.
Yeah.
But there's just like something about that culture is just like so magical to me. I was like,
Yes.
they know something that a lot of other cultures never figured out, and I want to go experience that. And I think it comes back to like that interconnectedness with everything, like having the
Mhm.
appreciation for like the water and the plants.
Everything.
Like everything has consciousness, right? Like it's not like that's just this thing. Like we're all part of like this big cosmic plan. And yeah, I don't know. It just speaks to me. So I hope like as soon as everything clears up, like that's one of the first places I want to go explore.
Oh, and then you'll have to, I want to hear everything. And I've said the same thing. For some reason, Japan, they're like 20 light years ahead of the rest of the world.
Mm,
I don't know what it is. Everything is just consciously, even all the technology, everything when you're there, they're just so efficient.
mm-hmm,
They're very humble, the way they bow, the way they speak to you. I mean, I'm saying them, but it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. The
mm-hmm,
respect, the humility,
mm-hmm,
and it's my soul is so deeply happy there. And I've always told myself, sometimes we say when we visit a place so much, oh, I could live here. I don't know if I could, but I do know that every time I go and visit, there's something that just I feel like you're saying, I feel some kind of magnetic electricity that just makes me
mm-hmm,
feel so good. And you want to hold on to that.
mm-hmm,
You just want to keep it going. It's a really beautiful feeling, but there's the yin and the yang. We have to have both.
mm-hmm. Yeah, everything's about balance, or at least like trying to like strive for it.
Because if I was that happy all the time, I don't know. I don't know. It might make everyone else around me happy, but
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to take up more of your time. This was amazing. I would definitely love to have you on again.
yes, let's
Yeah.
do it.
Thank you again. Do you want to tell the listeners like where they can find you, how they can support any projects that you're working on, all that good stuff?
Well, everything, the matrix, everything is connected to terapatrick.com. So actually on terapatrick.com, I have a blog on there, myteradice.com. So if you're not, it's my journal. It's basically like a daily journal that I write in, and I have my onlyfans.com/terapatrick, but terapatrick.com is really my home. It's my baby. Everything is on there. So
Well,
spend a lot of time on there. No?
yeah, go check it out, everybody. Well, thank you
Yay.
again, and I can't wait to do this again in the future.
Me too. Thank you. Stay in touch.
Of course. That's it for this week's episode. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate and review, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can also share this podcast with a friend. It helps my podcast grow, and I really appreciate it. I hope to see you next week.